Hello, everybody. Please be seated. Okay, on item 1 tonight, we have the Police and Crime Commissioner and Chief Constable joining us. I'd like to welcome them both, and Susan Dugworth and the Chief Constable of Northumbria Police, Vanessa Jardine, to the meeting. The PCC has offered to attend a public meeting of the Council to talk about the Police and Crime Plan and answer questions that Council may have. I propose the following the PCC presentation. There will be 3 questions from the Labour group, 2 questions from the Conservative group, and 1 question from Councillor Wallace, who sits as an independent member. If members have any questions which are not able to ask tonight, they can write to me as chair and after the meeting, and I will ensure that the questions are forwarded to the PCC. I would ask that questions in the meeting tonight are related directly to the matters which the PCC and Chief Constable cover in their presentation this evening. I will now invite PCC Dugworth to begin her presentation.
Sorry, hear me now. As I say, thank you very much for inviting me. One of my pledges during the election campaign was that I would keep in touch with residents, and one of the main forums for doing that is through local councils. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I have a very short video to show you first of all. It makes me cringe, but hopefully it gives you a bit of an idea. What I wanted to use tonight for was to explain to you, to talk you through the new Police and Crime Plan, which obviously is a legal requirement of the Police and Crime Commissioner, to talk you through that, then give you a bit of a background into the consultation around it, and then the scrutiny of it as well. And Chief Constable Jardine will speak after me, obviously, because I'm here first, and then we'll both answer questions, because obviously some questions are strategic, are around the high level stuff, and some are around operational issues. So we'll share that. So if we can do the video, and I'll try not. Safer streets and stronger communities. That's my ambition for the Northumbria Police Force area. Thanks to everybody who shared their thoughts, views and concerns. These have all informed my new Police and Crime Plan, ensuring that we are focused on the issues that matter to people. So we now have 6 new priorities that your police force will be expected to deliver on. They are: Priority 1, engaged and responsive police force. Northumbria Police will be there when you need them. Priority 2, crime and antisocial behaviour. We'll work together to tackle those issues affecting our communities the most. Priority 3, serious violence and organised crime. A robust approach is needed to tackle serious violence as well as preventative work. Priority 4, violence against women and girls. I want all women and girls to be safe and to feel safe, whether in public places or at home. Priority 5, hate crime and community cohesion. We have so many communities and diverse cultures to celebrate in our region, and we need to make sure that everybody feels welcome and safe here. Priority 6, victims and justice. We must always put victims first and ensure they have access to the best services to meet their needs. So thanks again to everybody who's contributed to this plan. It really is your plan, and it is our collective vision to provide safer streets and stronger communities for everyone who calls Northumbria home. I look forward to working with you all to put this plan into action. So I hope you recognise that that was North Shields Fish Quay that we did the filming on. And as you probably also noticed, it was probably one of the coldest days of the year. So I've learned something there about doing videos in summer, not winter. So the consultation process lasted 12 weeks, I think it was. We used a variety of methods. So we did a mail drop to 120,000 residents' addresses within the Northumbria area. That tended to focus on the more rural areas where we won't necessarily meet people in community groups, but not exclusively. There was an online questionnaire. I went out and I talked to community groups so I could get a broad range of views across ages, across racial demographics, and the different geographies. So we tried to do that. I also did a series of roundtable events involving professionals, our public sector partners, and also people with lived experience. So I did them on retail crime, I did them on serious violence and knife crime, I did them violence against women and girls, and on community cohesion as well. So I thought it would be useful for you just to get a taste of what your residents in North Tyneside said. And I'm sure none of this will come as a surprise to local councillors. But the top 3 priorities for North Tyneside were reducing antisocial behaviour, reducing serious and organised crime, and police response times. The top 3 issues that they wanted to see addressed were antisocial behaviour, motorbike disorder, and violent crime. There were 148 responses from North Tyneside alone to the question of, are there issues you would like the police to focus on in the forthcoming years? So some of the quotes from that are: more physical presence as a deterrent, especially around the coast on sunny days. Huge groups of kids causing antisocial behaviour on the beach can be intimidating. And as a resident of Seaton Sluice, I can understand that sentiment. Whitley Bay links car parks are racetracks most nights after 8 o'clock. Witness most nights while I'm out walking the dog. More enforcement cameras for our roads. The Coast Road, A19, A1 are treated like racetracks. Retail crime is rife. Shoplifting has a knock-on effect in terms of costs to everybody. Addressing violence against women and girls in all forms. This should include educating young people, empowering women and girls to report offences, and improving the criminal justice responses. And effective response times needed to respond to civil unrest locally. So some of the examples that I've done recently is held a media launch for the Safer Streets, Stronger Communities plan in the Fish Quay in North Shields, was interviewed by the Chronicle and local radio. And it's interesting, the Chronicle are just drip feeding that out. So they're using quotes from that interview around other things that come up. So they've not done it as a whole thing. Been having conversations, obviously, with the Chief Constable to determine what share of the extra £20 million national government investment in policing will look like operationally in terms of officers on the ground in our local communities. Welcome the good news from government about the hotspot response funding, which has continued and will allow us to continue to do some of the amazing work that we do with councils and the transport network. And I'll give you a couple of figures on that. I don't know about yourselves, but I think Project Shield has been an amazing success, and certainly we're getting that feedback from the public. If I can just give you a few figures on that, bear with me a minute. So we have across the region, antisocial behaviour has decreased by 17%, serious violence has decreased by 20%, and knife crime has decreased by 58%. We've been able to have 25,126 engagement events with local communities. Officers have seized 6 weapons in their operations. We've had 4,000 and 66 hours of partner engagement. So that's our local authorities and our transport networks, and an additional 4,144 police patrols. And there's been 81 stop and searches. This is in this quarter, so this isn't since it started. These figures are for the last quarter, and there's been 52 direct arrests as a result of Project Shield. So I suppose the other thing is how I am intending to be held to account. Obviously, my responsibility is the vision, it's the overall strategy, rather than the delivery, which is the responsibility of the Chief Constable. We hold the Chief Constable and therefore the force to account through our scrutiny processes. We've recently revamped them a little so that one of the things we're going to be able to do or want to do is to have questions from the public at those meetings. That isn't about the public coming to meetings, it's about submitting reports beforehand, which we will then ask and then report on that, and that will be on the website. We've also done quite a bit of work around just checking out that some of our external scrutiny panels are working effectively and they have people who've got recent experience. In terms of me being held to account, that is through things like this. This is through contact with the public in a variety of different ways. It's also through the police and crime panel, which meets bi-monthly, and there was a meeting yesterday. So just a couple of other things that I've done. The VRU has recently launched the Violence Prevention Ambassador Programme, and 500 schools have registered an interest, and many of whom are within North Tyneside area. George Stephenson High School, a group of young women there worked with Worky Ticket and my office to produce a poem that I used on the Reclaim the Night March. And again, we went with the press back to talk to those young people about that. I visited HMP Northumberland and met with prison officials and NEPAS, and part of that is around looking at how we support people on their release from prison, because I think there are some offences in particular where people are arrested, they get taken to court, they get short sentences, but actually no work's able to be done with people in that time, or any work that's done with them isn't necessarily always followed through as seamlessly as it should be. And if we don't deal with some of those underlying issues around substance abuse, around mental health, around homelessness and joblessness, then actually that cycle will continue. So that's one of my personal passions, is actually to break that cycle. And we continue to develop the work of victim services to improve people's access to free emotional, practical and therapeutical support, and make sure that they're signposted to services in their area. And I suppose from my point of view, I just wanted to finish to thank North Tyneside Council. I think we have a very positive relationship with North Tyneside, and a lot of the work that we do wouldn't be as successful as it is without those really valuable relations with local government. And what you bring as well is you bring your contacts and your organisations in the community, and it really is a team effort. So I think it probably makes sense for me to let the Chief Constable speak, and then we'll take questions between us, if that's all right.
Thank you, and thank you for welcoming me back. I came with the previous Police and Crime Commissioner last time, and I just want to share a few things. I think when I came for the first time, I was quite new into my position, and I kind of told you what I was intending to do. So what I'd like to do just for a couple of minutes really is tell you some of the things that we have done in the force, and hopefully you'll recognise some of that. I think the biggest change that North Tyneside has probably seen is we've changed the way that we operate within the force. So the entire force has changed its structure. We had 3 area commands before, which meant that North Tyneside was in with Northumberland and had a command structure that was based on 2 area commands. So we had 3 area commands across Northumbria Police. We've now moved to a model where we have 6. So North Tyneside has its own policing structure, it has its own command team, and that command team is accountable just for North Tyneside. So I hope that you have seen and felt some of that more responsiveness of the policing structure that we've done. That was quite an undertaking, as you can probably imagine, but we managed to do that within about 6 or 7 months of the work, and we're starting to really feel some of the benefits of that greater partnership and greater accountability. Since I was here last, obviously, we had the summer disorder. If I needed reminding of the wonderful community engagement, community support, community spirit of the North East, then I saw it in absolute bucket loads from last year. That summer evening when we had the disorder in Sunderland, actually I was out in North Tyneside with some friends, enjoying just sort of a summer's meal. By midnight that night, I was in the A&E department with my staff who'd had concrete bricks thrown at them, scaffolding poles, had numerous head injuries and other injuries. It was like a night like we've not seen, and was quite horrific. However, the community support that we felt as a force, and I thank each and every person in this room for that, was just quite astounding. We had 3,500 people the very next day at our open day. I was on the telephone to my head of comms at sort of 1 in the morning saying, I don't think we can hold our police open day over at Middle Engine Lane because of all the injuries we had, all the community disruption, the devastation that we had over at Sunderland. And we made the decision at that time to go ahead with it. And it's probably the best decision that we made, because of the 3,000 people that turned up, they were basically saying to us, do not let those people define us and our community here, because we support the police. We want you to have this day, and us coming here today is an example of us demonstrating our support for you, and you demonstrating your support for the community. So thank you to everybody in this room. I had a lot of messages, a lot of support, and we couldn't have done it without the community. We really couldn't. And actually, I think it really strengthened our community cohesion moving forward over the next sort of weeks and months, because the public really came together. They really came together to say, no, not in our region. We are not accepting this. This does not represent us. So I wanted to kind of say that today, because it was very, very important for us as a force and for us as a region. Obviously, since I was last here, we've had a new government, and Susan has briefly touched on the Safer Streets mission, the Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee, which for us means an opportunity to recruit a number of neighbourhood officers. I've just been down in Darlington this afternoon speaking with the Treasury to get some more details about what that actually looks like as we move into sort of years 1, 2 and 3 of that. But we see it as a real positive, a real way that we can get more police officers onto the streets, engaging with neighbourhoods and making Northumbria Police Area, but specifically North Tyneside, a safer place to live and work. And we'll work through what that looks like. We will start our recruitment pretty much immediately on that, and hopefully you will see and feel a difference in the forthcoming years as that kind of develops. Some of the local issues, and I'll just touch on a couple that I think there's a couple of questions potentially on them, but I know what matters to communities and the engagement for the police and crime plan certainly raised some of these as well. I know that shoplifting is a concern to people, and I think it's sort of a narrative that is well rehearsed, that in the last few years shoplifting hasn't been a priority for us. It absolutely is now. We have some dedicated operations. We've got an operation called Operation Paradise, which is really getting to support our local retailers and giving them the confidence to report crimes to us. We've seen a significant uplift in our outcome rate, in our positive outcome rates in tackling shoplifting. It's a really robust approach, and it's one that our neighbourhood teams lead on, targeting those nominals that are causing the most harm, supporting shops with their crime prevention activity, giving advice, problem-solving initiatives, high visibility patrol. And we're about to launch a new business watch area for Wallsend High Street, which I know has been of a concern. And all those businesses there that want to engage and become part of that business watch will receive visits from our neighbourhood teams and given them all that kind of support and advice to help them in that tackling shoplifting. North Tyneside, as we get into the sort of nicer weather, which hopefully we'll see a little bit more of, there's always a concern around antisocial behaviour. We ran our Coast Watch operation last year. We're going to run it again this year. I think one of the things that really benefited last year was our focus on some of the transport hubs, because we had lots of young people coming to our beaches in the area, using the transport hubs from outside of the area and causing that antisocial behaviour. So we will do it again. We will again work with partners. We will focus on our transport hubs, but we will also have lots of officers in and around our beaches, our areas of beauty, and it will be a combination of plainclothes officers along with uniform officers deploying to those areas. We did almost like a bit of a meet and greet at some of those transport hubs last time. So where these young people are coming, making sure that firstly they are going to behave in the right way, but if they don't, then really tackling some of that area. We're working with the council on places like the Meadowell Metro hub. We know it's difficult there. There's a number of places to come in and out of the station, and we're working closely with the council to sort of tackle that. There's some new CCTV cameras being put up by the local authority, which we're really supportive of, and it's a real benefit, and Meadowell's going to benefit from some of those areas. One of the Safer Streets missions is violence against women and girls, and the aspiration to reduce that by half in the next 10 years. And of course, one of the main areas to address violence against women and girls is in the area of domestic abuse. Our new policing model created its own investigation teams, its own CID teams for North Tyneside, and we've got a dedicated detective sergeant now who looks at every single domestic abuse crime that happens in North Tyneside. We're very, very focused on outcomes, and when I say positive outcomes, I mean the outcome that's right for the victim. And sometimes that means that we do evidence-led prosecutions. You may have heard it called previously victimless prosecutions. There's no such thing as a victimless prosecution. There's always a victim. So it's evidence-led. So we may make the decision to do a prosecution when we haven't got necessarily the support of the victim because it's the right thing to do. But I think that opportunity to review every single domestic abuse incident and crime also means that we can be much more preventative and go for some orders and really make people feel safer in the area, because that's really, really important. And we are absolutely committed to reducing violence against women and girls. I think that was all I was going to mention at this point, but we're really happy to take any questions that you might have for us.
Yeah, thanks very much for that presentation. I think it was very helpful. As I said, we've now got 6 questions in total coming, and I'd like to ask Councillor Bones to do his 2 questions first, if that's okay. We'll just work around that way.
Chair, so now I get to go first.
You
Very
get
kind of you.
first.
Thank you both very much for that. You both mentioned shoplifting in your presentations and in the priorities our residents have reflected to you. Retailers in North Tyneside often tell us that they feel abandoned by the police, and sometimes they don't feel that it's worth reporting theft anymore because it's not followed up on. We previously had
Kevin, can you turn the volume up, please? Let's say Kevin, but assume Kevin's there.
Sorry.
I think it's with it. I
I-
think it's
I
with you
thought I
turning
saw it
around
as
as
well,
well, Councillor Bones.
Okay. Is it?
You've got to speak into the microphone.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Perfect. So many retailers in North Tyneside tell us they often feel abandoned by the police, when with some saying that they don't bother to report shoplifting anymore because there's not a response. In a previous discussion in this chamber, the Cabinet Member for Community Protection said that saying shoplifting was out of control was misinformation. Question to the Police and Crime Commissioner: do you agree with that assessment, that it's misinformation to say that shoplifting is out of control? And to the Chief Constable, you mentioned in your presentation Shop Watch / Business Watch and the welcome news that's being extended to Wallsend. We've previously been promised that that would be extended to out of town businesses, particularly in areas like New York. Just wondered when that was likely to progress.
Can I clarify your question? So who said
So
shoplifting?
in a previous meeting in this chamber, the Cabinet Member for Community Protection said that saying shoplifting was out of control was misinformation. I just wondered if you agreed with that assessment.
I mean, it's hard for me to comment on something said by somebody else. I've done a lot of work around retail crime across the whole region, both around the big retail operators and also the corner shop operators. There has been an increase in shoplifting. I think one of the first things that the new government did was actually recognise that it was an issue. There is a bill going through Parliament about not just shoplifting, but actually violence against shop workers as well. And there has been money that has come both to the police, but more as importantly for the retailers to actually be looking at some of their crime prevention measures as well. The police are working very hard in terms of, so I think historically people have felt it's not worth it. I think now it absolutely is worth reporting it, and it will be followed up. The police certainly have a lot of success with what they class as nominals, so people who are regular shoplifters, but that goes back to a bigger criminal justice issue about they're picked up, they're arrested, they're charged, they go before court, they get a short sentence and they come out, and the shops will report themselves that they see it drop off while those people are in prison, but it starts again. So it's a bigger issue than just the police arresting them. It is around stopping that cycle of offending. What the police have focused, from my side, the conversations that I've had with them is focusing around it being as easy as possible to report. There are challenges because different shops, different companies have different systems. Sometimes the staff are not given the means or the time to report at the time. And I think, there are issues that we're working through about trying to make that as simple as possible. Use of CCV, that being straight on. I'm going on a walk around, I think it's next Friday, with the local councillors and the MP for the Wallsend area, specifically around Wallsend. And one of the focuses of that visit is to talk to the shopkeepers there and just get a sense of what's happening. But I don't think it's out of control, because I think we have a plan to deal with it, but it obviously, it has risen, and some of the reasons for that are around organised crime, they're around drugs, they're around homelessness, mental health issues, all sorts of things, and to some extent we need to be tackling them as well as just arresting.
Just in
Can
relation.
I just interrupt you, Vanessa, just before we start? Councillor Clark, do you say that you've got
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think there was some misinformation there. As I recall, Councillor Bones stated that shoplifting was out of control. I didn't say that was misinformation. I said that was sensationalising an increase in shoplifting. Councillor Bones, which is quite different. And I also referred to the fact that the former Conservative government policy on shoplifting
Chair,
had probably led to the issue being allowed to escalate. Thank you.
I think it's a point of personal clarification. So she was named in the thing, so she is entitled to that. So, Ness, do you want to carry on with your response?
Thank
to
you. Yeah,
the
it was just
question?
in relation to the Business Watch for Wallsend High Street. Just in terms of New York, I'm not. I don't know. I'd have to go and find out for you what the plans are in relation to a dedicated Business Watch around there. But I concur with the Commissioner. Shoplifting wasn't a priority, but it is. It absolutely is now. And I think that shoplifting has risen in our data, which I think is a positive thing, because we know that shops were not reporting it because of the reasons that you quite rightly said, in terms of having no confidence that anything would be done. I think there is a very different position now, and people are reporting. We've made it very difficult, I think, for shop owners in asking them to send packages to us, around the shop. That's all changed, and we absolutely are committed to shoplifting. We recognise the impact that it has on shop owners, and we're in a very different position.
And I think also what we're trying to do is get a national system, so that those big companies all sign up to the same way of reporting, because at the moment there are as many different reporting systems as there are organisations. Just a couple of things as well is the increase in the use of civil and criminal behaviour orders and exclusion orders to keep people out of areas. You'll have all seen on the television, there was a female offender in the North Tyneside area who could only go into one shop. So that again enables shops to refuse to serve them. And also the police work with vulnerable premises and vulnerable, those small neighbourhood shops, to look with them about how they can improve their crime prevention and the protection of staff.
Do you like to ask a second question, Councillor?
Councillor Lilly has it.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Lilly.
Thank you, Chair. This is mine to the PCC. You've increased your precept by roughly 3 times the rate of inflation, whilst at the same time employing a deputy PCC, a position which none of your predecessors relied upon. Is this the best use of taxpayers' money in light of the goals you're attempting to achieve?
So the reason that Northumbria's is 7.7% is because the council tax is already the lowest in the country. It's still the lowest in the country. So residents of the Northumbria area pay a smaller precept than anywhere else in the country. So whatever your increase is, if you have a smaller amount to start with, then it ends up as a larger percentage of that. So I think everywhere in the country, we had a report today, I think every police and crime commissioner in the country put it up by £14, which was what the government said. The government said, this is the money you'll get, but that includes £14 on the council tax. That's not new. Governments have been doing that for years. I think there was a couple that put it up by 13.97 pence or something, and we've all played those games in the past, haven't we? But it meant that ours was always going to look bigger in terms of percentage, but actually Northumbria residents are still getting really good value for money and are paying less for their police force and their services, because it's not just the police force, it is those support services, it's that work in education, it's the work to support victims, than they are even in neighbouring police forces. Any staffing matters is covered within the staffing budgets within my office, which have not increased.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Wallace, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Question to the Police and Crime Commissioner. What are you doing to reduce the dreadfully long waiting times which residents face when they try to call the non-urgent 101 phone number? You say that one of your first priority is for the police to be engaged and responsive. Yet time and time again, we hear that our residents are left hanging on the phone. They simply can't get through. If they were able to make contact, they could report their information, and this would actually help the police. I know it's a long-running issue. One of your predecessors, Vera Baird, in this chamber promised to sort it out, but it appears from residents that it's still a dreadful problem, and I've experienced the difficulties myself.
So I'm not going to fully answer this question because it's operational. But what I will say is there has been a massive improvement in response rates, and people are recognising that. There's also been an increase in the different ways that people could contact the police. So, for instance, during the civil unrest in summer, most of the intelligence we got, the reports we got from the community actually came through social media. So it's lots of different ways, but I'm sure that the chief will be able to give you more detail on the response rates.
Thank you. I think you asked this question last time as well, and I talked about the significant improvements that our 101 answering has made, and it has made even more since I was last time they were here. We have just been inspected by the HMIC FRS, and whilst the results aren't out yet, they have again commended us for our improvements that we've made in our control rooms. At peak times, there are some times when it does take a little bit longer to get through, but broadly, our answer times for 101 are within our objectives and the times that we set. We say that we will answer within 3 minutes, and I can provide you some specific figures, but we do answer within that time, accepting at some peak times there are some delays. We've also been recognised nationally for some of our, as the Commissioner's just said there, digital options for people as well. We offer a range of different ways that people can contact us, and when people call us, we outline some of those ways as well, so that people don't have to wait on the phone. We also monitor our abandonment rates as well, and we have decreased our abandonment rates, and some of those is because people use multiple ways to contact us, waiting for either an online service or answering. But our answer times have significantly improved over the last sort of 3 or 4 years. We constantly look at it, but we are within what we set our own self-imposed targets for that.
And it is part of the scrutiny that I conduct of the force in terms of that, and it was actually on a report that we looked at today.
Councillor Johnson, are you asking?
I'm not Chair. Councillor Holloway, Samuel and Clark will ask our questions.
Okay. So Samuel and
hate and crime community cohesion, you stated as one of a standalone priority in your police and crime plan. Do you have any examples of work that has been carried out in North Tyneside?
So obviously, I'm not saying hate crime hasn't been something that the police have, had in their sights and worked with. For me, it rose out of the events of last August, and recognising that there were issues within our community that weren't being raised, that people just lived with day in, day out, and just accepted as part of life. So there was something for me about making sure that that is recorded and that people report it. And that's about people recognising themselves when they're victims of hate crime, but it's also about the services that they are accessing so that they know. So, for instance, housing providers recognising when things are a hate crime rather than a neighbourhood dispute, for instance, and then making sure we have a police response to it and support. For me, it's a two-edged sword, though. So we can police the hate speech and crime. We can do that, but actually, I think in everything that I aim to do as a police and crime commissioner, it's about preventing it in the first place if possible. So I think from my discussions that week and subsequently with different individuals and community groups, there is a real need for us to just talk more openly about some of those divisions and some of those feelings of anger and fear that are within our communities. So there is a commissioners fund that people can apply for, and we do 2 a year. And the one that we've just recently awarded to was specifically around community cohesion and hate crime. I'm just looking at here, so 25,000 was awarded to groups in North Tyneside to tackle hate crime and to improve community cohesion, including One North East and the Diversity Hub. If you want, I haven't got the breakdown of specifics about where it went, but I can get that to you. Connected Voices is a service that we fund. The Police and Crime Commissioner funds that. That is a regional resource across my region as opposed to the bigger region. And 10% of the victims who in the last year have been supported by I can't think of the name. What's it called? Connected Voices. So 10% of the people who've been supported there are residents of North Tyneside. We have worked at Northumbria Police and my office during Hate Crime Awareness Week. We're talking about, you know, people recognising hate crime and how to report it. And organisations that were involved with that was the North Tyneside Disability Forum, Whitley Bay Islamic Centre. I am always willing to go and visit and talk to people. So if there are groups within North Tyneside that I haven't had contact with, they've not had contact with my office, then please let me know and I'll reach out to that as well. And there's the educational work that we do with all schools. We fund Show Racism, the Red Card, and Newcastle United Foundation to work specifically around race awareness, diversity, and they've worked with 2,500 children and young people plus in the North Tyneside area over the past year.
Thank you.
Councillor Hallway.
Thank you. Thank you both for your presentation as well. The government has committed to introduce domestic abuse specialists and domestic abuse police teams into 999 control rooms under Reneem's law. Can you tell us what has been done to enhance call handling of domestic abuse cases in police control rooms in Northumbria?
So you're right, the government's announced this additional money, and I think there's 5 pilots across the country. Northumbria Police have had domestic violence experts in call centres since 2021, and that's been funded by the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, so obviously predates me. I think the experience of Northumbria is one of the reasons that the government has put the money into these pilots. It works in terms of being there to support people answering the calls if they might not necessarily know where they need to refer somebody, what the issue is. So there's an education support of the staff, but also having them in the call centres means that they are there to make sure that the victim is signposted and supported to go to the next range of services. We're part of the pilot, so even though we're already doing it, we're still getting some additional money. So we're busy looking at how we actually enhance that service and improve the service for victims and for our staff who generally want to give the very best of services to victims, but might not necessarily always know exactly how to do that.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, as Cabinet Member for Community Safety, thank you for your presentations, and I really value our strong partnership with Northumbria Police. We're doing a fantastic range of work to prevent and address antisocial behaviour, crime and disorder. You said a little bit about one of those projects, Project Shield, earlier in your presentation. And I know through that project, 2 North Tyneside areas have been identified where increased patrols are taking place, and that's in Wallsend and Meadowell. And we know also that North Tyneside benefits from the safer transport work, as it's a busy route from the city to our beautiful coast. Can you please tell us a little bit more about Project Shield and its impact in North Tyneside, if possible? Thank you.
Yeah, so Project Shield was launched last May, and it was it's using money that comes to us through the hotspot funding. And what the funding has done is enable us to give some resources to local authorities, some to the transport network, particularly Nexus, but not exclusively Nexus, and also to fund overtime for police officers. What they've done recently is Operation Respect. This has happened in the last few weeks, which has just been about, it's been about the police and the council being out there, being seen in North Shields town centre, not necessarily looking to arrest people unless necessary, but just being there, being visible, talking to young people, talking to maybe anybody who's sleeping on the streets, and actually reducing those incidences of violence, shoplifting, harassment, and they'll use a range of powers to do it. I've been out with a couple of in different areas. I've been out with a couple of the Project Shield teams, and it's really incredible, because you've got the joint intelligence of an area, the understanding of it, the knowing of individuals from both the local authority and from the police, and also from the transport workers as well. So it's proactive. It's not just reactive. It's about being out there, being seen. People know that they're there, and that really close relationship that I see being built up. So what it's done since October to December, specifically in North Tyneside, there's been 40 additional patrols in Meadowell and Wallsend, joint police and local authority, and just police patrols has been an additional 114. We've seen the rates, I quoted them before, about how, you know, the percentages have really dropped around that crime that people see every day. You know, most people, fortunately, never come in contact with serious organised crime. Everybody comes in contact with some level of ASB, and that's why it's always so high on people's concerns. And what this does is really address that. And I just think it's super. I mean, there's also been some additional CCTV capacity, looking at designs around areas and, you know, designing out crime as well. The additional portable knife arches, which are used across the region, and again have been really successful. They're particularly successful when they're used at metro stations, because any interchange, and North Shields is one of those, brings with it particular risks and challenges, because people come from all over there.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Wasn't anything you want to add to that, Vanessa? Was there?
I think the only thing I would add is, when you look at year-on-year figures and compare 2023 to 2024, crime in ASB is down in the Project Shield area. So I think, just to echo what you were saying about its value, we are actually seeing tangible decreases in both ASB and crime in those areas where Project Shield has been deployed.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the opportunities that we're going to get with the neighbourhood policing guarantee in the future gives us opportunities to almost, that it's not a special project. It's mainstreaming that work in terms of our community policing, and the importance in prevention of working with partners to do that as well. So thank you for the opportunity. Enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. It's I think from your initial presentation, it was very interesting, and I appreciate what you've done with the questions. You've given some very full responses to the questions that members have asked. So I think it's been very worthwhile for you to come along tonight and give the information. So thank you very much for that. As I said before, any members who's wanted to ask any further questions, if they want to forward them to me, I'm happy to forward them on to the PCC, and I'm sure we'll get a response back quickly to that.
Chair, can I just raise this, because it was very rude of one of our councillors actually playing with their phone during the presentation that was given, or the responses that were given by our Police and Crime Commissioner, and more so one of the councillors that's involved in a motion that we will be seeing or discussing, which is motion 3. I think it was most rude of that councillor to actually be more interested in his phone than what the Police and Crime Commissioner was saying to this meeting.
Well, that's obviously members are expected to sort of be respectful when we do have visitors to the
Chair, can I just point out that many members on this side use our phones for questions and to share various pieces of information with each other through the meeting. It's perfectly standard and it happens throughout most meetings. It's not playing on your phone, it's taking an active part in the meeting.
Well, with respect, Councillor Bones, I did notice the same incident, and it's unusual that when people are sharing questions and remarks that brings a smile to their face on council meetings. So that's obviously something different to what's normally people have.
The reality is, Chair, we can't take motion 3 as an important one to the councillors across that chamber, given the fact that that councillor was playing with his phone, was more interested in it, even if they were passing information, which was quite rude when we had a guest at this councillor of actually doing that. So I can't take their motion 3, a part of their motion, which is dealing with, if you want, phones. I can't take that seriously. I can't take them seriously.
Chair, is this a point of order? Or
hold on. I think, Councillor Harrison, I think you've made your point. Obviously, we'll be getting to motion 3, and you'll have the opportunity to speak in that motion. So I think we should end it there. And obviously, something's been, I think
I'm
been enough.
Proposing motion 3, and I haven't got a mobile phone.
As I say, we'll deal with motion 3 when motion 3 comes up on the agenda.
Chair, could I make a point of personal explanation?
You have a point of personal explanation.
Please, yeah. So I was on my phone, but I'm also on call for the Light Brigade. So I do need to check to check that if any alerts come through.
I don't think it was. I don't think it was you that people were mentioning.
I know that some of the councillors are also currently at work and on call, so they do have to check their phones. So I think just to accuse people of playing on their phones perhaps is maybe a misunderstanding of how people use their phones.
Well, no misunderstanding, Chair. Well, I never referred to the councillor, but the councillor knows who they were.
But we're moving on anyway. It's so we'll leave it there.
I think the accusation is that somebody's playing on the phone, and I'm assuming it's Councillor Bartoli, but he is on call at work as well, so he does have to check his phone for work. So I think this idea that somehow people are playing on their phones is insulting to people who are actually using it for work.
I think we'll move on now. We've got a busy agenda. We've got a lot to get through today, but I would just remind members not to sort of, unless it's essential, that they use any mobile devices or anything like that. Okay. Before I move on, I'd like to make a couple of announcements and changes to the order of business tonight. We'll take item 6, North Tyneside Pay Policy 25-26, and consider that item after we have dealt with item 4, which is agreeing the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of February 2025. This is because the matters in the pay policy report must be decided by the 31st of March. This is the last council meeting before that date. It is therefore important that the item of substantive business is decided tonight. I'm also proposing to switch the mayor's announcements and chair's announcements later on in the agenda, just to make sure that we'll get everything done. As we've just discussed, as the agenda this evening is very full, I'm also proposing that item 7 on the agenda, which is questions by members of the council, is handled differently. I'm proposing to apply Council Procedure Rule 10, paragraph 13B. This rule states that where at the meeting the chair considers it appropriate, the response to questions will be taken in the form of written answers circulated to all members within 5 days of the meeting. Given the volume of business on this evening's agenda, instead of taking questions orally, it would be appropriate if all members received a written response to their questions. This will enable all items of business on the agenda to be considered in the meeting this evening and still allow members to receive a full answer on their questions, on the questions they've asked. It will also mean that all members' questions are dealt with consistently, rather than some members being able to ask their questions verbally and have supplementary questions, and other members may not get that chance because theirs are being done in a written format. So it's just to make sure it's as fair as possible. But I don't want to be in a situation where we get through some of the questions and those members who had the chance to ask that question get a supplementary question, whereas other members who maybe run out of time don't get it. They won't get the same treatment. They'll only get the first question answered. So I'm trying to be as fair as possible on that. So it's everybody or nobody. So that's why I'm looking at that. So can we move on now to item 2? Sorry, Councillor Bones.
Chair, on a point of order further to that announcement, the Constitution does allow for questions to be taken in writing should time not allow, which is the rule that we've used up until this point in situations like this. I think it's preemptive to be taking all questions in writing when it may be the case that we get to the end of all of the other items on the agenda with plenty of time to spare for questions. Would you be willing to consider reconsider that should the case arise that we get to the end of the agenda with plenty of time for questions to be taken orally?
At the moment, I'm looking at taking all the questions being done en masse on written responses. Obviously, I will consider it, but I'm concerned that I do not want to get halfway through and find that some members don't get treated the same as others. So my intention would be to still, we've got a lot on the agenda. We've got some important matters. We've got 5 motions to deal with and a report. So I'd be surprised if we could get it done. That's why I did it in the first place, looking at the agenda. My intention would still be to do it that way, but, you know, obviously we'll have to see how we go. But Councillor Johnson, Carl Johnson.
Chair, can I just question that? Are you going to take a decision now? If not, the Labour Group would like to suspend standing orders to take that decision. We believe the decision should be taken now to allow full debate on motions and important pay policy documents. You know, it would be vastly unfair should the Labour Group get to ask their questions and supplementaries and the Conservative Group don't. And the last thing I'd want is the defenders of democracy of the road there to be claiming that once again. So I would ask that you take that decision now, Chair. If not, the Labour Group will move to suspend standing orders and move that, Chair.
Councillor Lott.
Thank you, Chair. In your introductory remarks, you used the phrase that you were going to propose. I'll second you.
Thank you, Councillor Lott. Yes, obviously, my position at the moment is clear. It's, as far as I'm concerned, the agenda of the meeting tonight makes it impossible to make sure that we can guarantee that everybody will get those questions asked. It takes potentially, at least given the basic times in the Constitution, allow 10 minutes for each question. We've got 12 questions, which in theory could be 120 minutes, 2 hours. It's that's a lot of time. I realise that it can be a bit shorter, but by the time you get there, you've got to allow for this response time and then the supplementaries and things like that, which could mean it's outside my control. And I don't want to be in a position where the meeting isn't in my control and some people will get treated differently. So that's where we're standing at the moment. I'm minded to do it, but, you know, if necessary.
Move on. You've made a decision. Can we please move on, or we'll be talking about this and therefore losing that time? Can we please move on, Chair?
Sorry,
You've made your decision.
Hold on. Councillor Lott, just.
Strictly speaking, Chair, there's a motion being proposed and I seconded it.
Okay, councillor Bones.
Chair, it was just for clarification. If the questions are answered in writing, will there be an opportunity for supplementary questions to be answered in writing as well?
Sorry, I missed that question.
If the questions are to be answered in writing, will there be an opportunity for supplementary questions to also be answered in writing?
Yes, yes, it would be. Okay, so we're now going to move on, and we'll move on to item 2, which is apologies. I've received apologies from councillors Liz McMullen and Trisha Neary. Are there any further apologies this evening? Yes, councillor Cruddas.
Councillor Sarah Dean.
Dear. Councillor Thirlway.
Councillor Pat Oliver.
Okay. Councillor Pat Oliver. Anybody else? Yes, councillor O'Shea.
Yeah. Can I mention George Kerwin's not going to be here tonight, and can I ask the council to congratulate Joe and more importantly his wife Hazel on the recent birth of their daughter Beatrice.
Right, that's very nice. Thank you very much. He's got a pass for tonight. Councillor Bones.
Councillor Dr. Scargill.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to item 3, which is a declaration of interests. Can I remind members, if they have any registrable and or non-registrable interest in matters appearing on the agenda to be considered at this meeting, they must verbally declare these interests and the nature of the interests. You are also invited to disclose any dispensations from the requirement to declare any registrable and non-registrable interests that you have been granted to you in respect of any matters appearing on the agenda. Those members should also complete the card circulated and return it to the reciprocal located on the desk of the Democratic Services Officer before leaving tonight's meeting. Are there any members interested? Councillor Bones.
On item number 6, Chair, a member of my family works for the authority.
Anybody else? Up over here. Okay, can we work our way along the line, starting at Councillor Harrison and going that way, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's item 5, motion 1. I'm a co-opted governor of Northumbria Healthcare Foundation Trust, and I've taken advice from the monitoring officer and been told I don't have to leave the meeting and I can vote on this item.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Cruddas.
I have members of the family who are employed by North Tyneside Council.
Yes, Councillor Thirlway.
Also on item 6, I have a family member who's employed by North Tyneside Council.
Okay, Councillor Carl Johnson.
Item 6, family member employed by the council.
Councillor O'Shea. Start work with that way.
Chair, it's motion item number 5, motion 2. I've already expressed a view about the pool, and I will absent myself from the debate and the vote.
Okay, Councillor Hannah Johnson.
Thank you. It's item number 5, motion 3. I work as a teacher for a multi-academy trust, but I've been told it's okay to stay in the meeting.
Okay, Councillor Phillipson.
Yep, same motion 3 on the agenda. I'm a teacher employed in an academy school. I've taken advice and I don't believe I need to leave the meeting.
Very much. Councillor Grayson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm doing some work as a supply teacher, so it's in relation to motion 3. In light of some earlier comments, could I just also apologise that I've had one of my cancer treatments this week, and I may need a couple of comfort breaks. I'm not sneaking out just for private break. I may need some time, a couple of times. So just wanted to let the meeting know, just in light of comments that have been made earlier about councillors.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Grayson. Just for going along the front, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I need to declare a registrable interest in respect of motion 2, in that I have an interest in property on the Tynemouth coast. I've discussed that with Legal and Democratic Services, and given the considerable distance between that property and the pool site, I've been advised that there's no reason to leave the chamber, and I'll be staying for that motion.
Thank you for that. Isabel?
Yeah, it's motion 1. I work for Northumbria Healthcare, but I've been advised I don't need to leave the meeting.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murphy?
Yes, in relation to item 6, a member of my family works for North Tyneside Council, and in relation to item 5, motion 3, I am currently employed as a teacher by Northumberland County Council.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mulvanna?
Item 6, non-registrable interest. Family member works for the council.
Yes. Yep.
Item 6, Chair, I've got non-registrable interest as I have a family member who works for North Tyneside Council.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Anybody else on the back row? Oh, yes.
Motion 3, I'm also employed as a teacher.
Thank you very much. Working around this way now. Any further? Okay. Councillor Bartoli?
Motion 1, I have a family member who works for the NHS Trust. I'll be leaving the meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Lilly?
Thank you, Chair. One of my family is a GP in North Tyneside, but I don't think I need to leave the meeting.
Okay. Councillor J. Bartoli?
Motion 1, I work for Northumbria Healthcare Trust and I'll be leaving the meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. Is that everybody? Oh, Councillor Hunter?
Chair, I'm not sure. Motion 3, I'm a chair of governors of a school.
Okay. That's some members' interests dealt with. We now move to item 4, which is the minutes. This item is the minutes of the council held on the 13th of February. Can I ask that council confirm those minutes, please? Thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to item 6, which is the North Tyneside Council Pay Policy 2526. Can I ask, is the Mayor, are you moving this or? Oh, Councillor McMullen. Councillor McMullen, you're moving the report, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Council is asked to consider the pay policy statement for 25-26, which is included as Appendix 1 of this report. Under the Localism Act 2011, it is a legal requirement that the authority publishes a pay policy statement before the 31st of March each year. The purpose of this statement is to set out the authority's policies on a range of pay matters relating to the workforce. The authority understands the importance of its openness and transparency in setting pay, which is fair, consistent and equitable across the workforce. It is also vital that the authority can demonstrate value for money, particularly around the roles that senior leaders play in the organisation. The attached pay policy outlines the current practice in the authority on pay and grading structures, job evaluation, policies and terms and conditions in relation to the remuneration and payment to chief officers. In determining the pay and remuneration for all of its employees, the authority complies with all relevant employment legislation. The key areas for the Council to note about the pay policy 25-26 is that the median average salary is £30,071. This is in line with our forecasts. The pay multiple stays the same at 1 to 6. The majority of North Tyneside Council employees are part of the Green Book Terms and Conditions, and the current pay scale is contained within Appendix A of the policy. There will be a new pay scale effective from the 1st of April 2025, but this has not yet been agreed as negotiations are at a national level which are continuing. Any increase will be backdated to the 1st of April 2025 when agreed. The Director of Resources, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, the Head of Paid Service, the Head of People and Organisational Design and the Head of Law will undertake all necessary measures with respect to the authority's pay and grading structure and job evaluation scheme to ensure it remains both fair and effective in measuring job roles and any changes to the national pay spines are implemented. I ask the Council to approve the recommendations as set out in the report.
Okay, do you have a seconder for that?
Second, reserve the right to speak, Chair.
Councillor Johnson. Are there any questions to the report? Yes, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you, Chairman. I wonder if the Cabinet Member can tell us whether there are any outstanding job evaluation claims that have yet to be decided.
Not at this time.
can't tell us or there aren't any.
Oh, sorry, that there are no outstanding claims at this time.
Are there any further questions to the report? Okay then, can I therefore ask many members if there's anybody wants to speak to the report? Okay, Councillor, do you wish to use your right to reply or?
Can't see why I would.
Okay, can we just go to the vote then? Are we using the electronic voting system? Okay, so please vote.
Open the vote, please. Can those members please vote now? Close the vote now.
Okay, that's 54 in favour, none against and no abstentions. So that's passed. Thank you very much. Sorry. The next item is motions. We have 5 valid motions have been received as detailed on the agenda. Please note details of the legal and financial implications of each of these motions have been circulated to members prior to the meeting. I would remind members that the electronic voting system, as we've just seen, is in use. So we have motion 1 signed by Councillor Thirlaway to move the motion, please.
I'm going to move the motion, Chair.
Oh, you're moving the motion. Sorry, Councillor Johnson.
I'll wait till Councillor Bartoli's of their benefit. Thank you, Chair. I don't intend to spend long on this motion. I think the principle of this motion has been agreed across this chamber in the past. What has changed, though, is now we have a Labour government who is investing in our National Health Service after 14 years of cut by the Conservatives. Waiting list at record high under the Conservatives. Nobody can get a GP appointment. And now the Labour government has acted. It's investing in our health service. Waiting times down, GP appointments up. And today we've started the process of getting rid of NHS bureaucracy, which the public overwhelmingly support. What is clear in North Tyneside is if you need blue light emergency care, you have access to a fantastic service locally. If you arrive in an ambulance, you have access to a fantastic service, fantastic staff that will take the best care of you that you can get. What is more difficult is if you have a minor illness around the borough. Cramilton is inaccessible for anybody that relies on public transport. Cramilton NSEC is inaccessible for lots of people that rely on public transport from North Tyneside. I checked this morning, if I was to go from my house to NSEC in a taxi, if I couldn't get, because it would require 2 changes on public transport and an hour and 45 minutes to get to NSEC from my home. If I was to get a taxi there, it would cost £28.50. I don't think that's sustainable for people to be paying £60 return almost both ways. So that's an issue we need to address. We have a very good hospital at Rake Lane in our borough that serves fine during the day. Let's make sure we can get it open 24 hours. I used to use Battle Hill Walking Centre quite a lot when it was in my ward, and we campaigned hard to keep it. I know that wasn't the local NHS. I took the decision that was Newcastle as opposed to Northumbria. But it was a fantastic service. Other councils around the area still have walking centres in their borough. We don't. It would be pointless, Chair, to have another task and finish group, another scrutiny group to look at this. What we need is a sustained campaign from this council and the person at the helm of this council to try and bring these services back. We have a government that is listening to us again after 14 years of being ignored by the Tories. So let's unite across this chamber and try our absolute best to get the best health services possible for the residents of the borough that they deserve. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Johnson, do you have a seconder for that? Okay.
Second, reserve the right to speak.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gray. Are there any members who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to move an amendment.
Okay.
Happy to hear the debate, Chair, while the motion's getting read out. Happy for Councillor Bones to crack on.
Thank you, Chair. I've been calling to restore 24 A&E services at Rake Lane and walk-in services at Battle Hill from the day that I was first elected. And for years, Labour councillors have blocked those attempts. We all know that Cramlington provides an excellent standard of blue light emergency care, but that's not the issue. The issue is that residents are being left with no alternative but to travel miles out of the borough, often in the middle of the night. We have an A&E off a motorway in Northumberland designed to be difficult for local people to get to without calling an ambulance, and local services in North Tyneside downgraded and stripped of resources. Public transport options are completely inadequate, even for people working at the hospital during the day, let alone at night. A round trip in a taxi can cost over £60 in the dead of night, which no one can afford, especially our older residents. This is all because local Labour is too spineless to call for the better services in our area. I've spoken to residents who have put off attending until the morning because they're unsure how they would make the journey. That's on your record. I gave Labour the opportunity to restore these services if they wanted to, but they blocked it when it was helpful politically. I'm sitting opposite a Labour Party who are nothing but politically opportunistic, happy to let residents in our borough suffer because they are more interested in blaming everything on someone else. Thank goodness there is a mayoral election in a few weeks' time, because if there wasn't, the Labour Party wouldn't be talking about this issue. For me, restoring healthcare has been a priority from day one, and my record shows that. For Labour, who are in charge, this is just something they talk about at election time. To treat it as something serious and not a political football, something to block when the Tories suggest it, and to bring back up when you need to win an election, that's disgusting. I know there are members on the opposite side who agree with me and who see through their own party's lies. I've changed this proposal so that we can deliver real change to people's lives in North Tyneside, so that people don't have to worry about their elderly mum needing to go to A&E in the middle of the night. I hope that members from across the chamber can unite on a proposal that's focused on change, not politics.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Do you have a seconder for that amendment? Yes, Councillor Johnson, would you like to speak now, or do you want to? No. Okay, do we have anybody who wishes to make any comments on the amended motion? No. Okay, so do you want to use your?
I get the right reply, Chair, not Councillor Bones. I would definitely like to take it. Thank you. Councillor Bones, you say you've campaigned, but from your website for the last 9 months, all of the mention of A&E at Rake Lane disappeared and it suddenly reappeared in the last couple of months. I have the screenshots, I'll share them with you. All of a sudden it's now reappeared. I wonder what it is. You say you and Councillor John Johnson must have more power than any other councillor in this chamber if you offered us the chance to get services back. Not a single councillor in this chamber can offer us to get services back. The council does not have that power. You know that. It was you playing political games, as you always try to going forward. This council can pass any report it wants, saying it wants A&E at Rake Lane and Battle Hill Walking Centre back reopened. It will not make a difference. Campaigning and lobbying will make the difference to get that back. And that's what this original motion does. It sets us about campaigning and lobbying to get these services returned under a Labour government who's now investing in our NHS after the disastrous Tory government cut it to the bones and put it on its knees for the last 14 years, Chair. We'll be voting against this amendment.
Chair, on a point of personal clarification, Councillor Johnson just named me in that reply. The working group that this council put together to look at this issue could have recommended, as part of this broader campaign Councillor Johnson talks about, that A&E services. It's personal explanation.
Isn't it? That isn't what the outcome of the working group was. Isn't a personal clarification.
It's clarification on the point I made in my speech about how Councillor Johnson and I could have influenced and tried to influence it, and how the Labour group opposite blocked that.
But
that's personal clarification, Chair.
But well, I don't think it's a personal clarification. What the decision of the working group was is the decision of the working group. So
and the work that Councillor Johnson and I did on that working group was the clarification I was making, Chair.
Once again, Chair, you've made a decision and you're being questioned.
Yeah, I'm not sure why.
Okay, well, I think we're now ready to go to the vote, Councillor Johnson. Okay, can we go to the vote on this? We're voting on the amended motion first.
Can all members please vote on the amendment? If all members have voted, I'll close the vote.
That motion is in favour. We've got 6 against 56. 56. So that motion.
46.
46, sorry, 46. So that amended motion fails. So we're now going to the substantive motion that was originally moved. Thank you.
Rawls, you move to vote, Chair.
Okay, we'll go to the vote on the substantive motion.
The vote, please, if members can vote now. If all members have voted, I'll close the vote.
That was 52 votes in favour and none against and no abstentions. So that motion has now been carried. Thank you very much. We're just waiting for Councillor Bartoli. Okay. Now move on to motion number 2, signed by Councillor Bartoli, Councillor Bones and Councillor John Johnson. I believe you're moving the motion, Councillor Bartoli.
I am, Chair. Chair, I'm pleased to bring this motion before the council tonight because frankly, the state of Tynemouth Pool is a disgrace to this council. It's a stain on this administration and those that came before it. Tynemouth Outdoor Pool is not just a derelict site, it's a constant reminder of our coastal history, a renowned landmark woven into the fabric of Tynemouth's identity and one that we as a council have neglected. Within many of our lifetimes, it was a vibrant community asset, a place where families gathered and where generations learned to swim, and where people enjoyed outdoor swimming in a stunning setting. Yet for decades, successive administrations have allowed it to fall into an ever worsening state of decay. Every year it crumbles further, and with each passing winter, the dream of its restoration becomes more challenging. Despite the council's neglect, the Friends of Tynemouth Pool have campaigned to bring this building back to life. It's a group of passionate, dedicated individuals who work tirelessly to find a way forward. They've secured widespread public support and raised significant funding and have developed a vision for the pool's future. They've even got planning permission for the first phase of the renovation, which was supported by Labour and Conservative councillors from Tynemouth and supported unanimously by the Planning Committee. Their ambition is undeniable, their commitment is unwavering, but passion alone is not always enough for these kind of projects. As with so many community-led projects, they faced obstacles that require specialist expertise, navigating complex funding applications, overcoming logistical and planning challenges, and engaging with key stakeholders who can help bring their vision to life. And that is where the council has an opportunity to make a meaningful difference. This motion is not asking for blank cheques or unrealistic commitments. It simply asks that we allocate one full-time council officer or equivalent within existing resources to work alongside the Friends of Tynemouth Pool Group for an initial period of 1 year. It's not about handing them the project on a plate, nor does it guarantee success, but it does ensure that this project is at least given a fighting chance. And to be clear, if at the end of that year it becomes evident that the pool simply cannot be restored, then at least we'll given the project an honest effort. That too is valuable because it would allow us to move forward and consider alternative uses for the site rather than leaving it to rot indefinitely, as has been the approach by this council for far too long. If we don't take this step, if we continue to sit back and let this site decay further, then we are complicit in its demise. We owe it to the residents of North Tyneside to give the pool a real chance, whether it is ultimately restored as a pool or repurposed into something else that benefits our community. The council and the community should not be working against each other on this project. We should be aligning our resources, our expertise and our ambitions to find a genuine resolution. And that is what this motion hopefully seeks to achieve. Thank you, Chair.
Bartoli, do you have a second for that motion? Councillor Boone.
Second and reserve the right to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any members who wish to speak to the motion or on the motion? Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep this brief. Excuse me. People involved with the pool group have contacted me a number of times over the last year, you know, in part because of my professional background funding large construction projects. When this motion was published, I was contacted again by members of the pool group, you know, expressing surprise and dismay that this had been brought into the chamber without anyone taking the time to speak with them. Certainly those who contacted me expressed that view. I think were it not for that, I think both myself and Councillor Day would no doubt speak at length on this motion. But given that, you know, I would really just encourage anyone on this side of the chamber to you know, not take this for what it is presented as. You know, and I don't believe this is genuinely a motion which has its roots in that community group or is something that they've asked for.
Councillor Bailey, are there any other members who wish to speak on the motion? Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I think for Councillor Bartoli to suggest we haven't supported the Friends of Time Out Pool on this is, you know, a bit rich. We have given them the opportunity with the land there. The council give them planning permission. We've engaged a number of consultants and set up a number of meetings with them over the years with consultants to try and bring this forward. So we certainly have give support to the Friends of Time Out of Pool over the years, and we have continued to do so. What I can't do is support this motion. It's once again the Conservative Party bringing motions to this council that should have been in their budget just last month. Members remember last month we faced a difficult choice after £500 million of cuts to this council, where we've had to cut 200 full-time equivalent roles from this council. To then assign one to this, I think, would be doing a disservice to all those staff members that will be leaving the authority. This is a community-led project, and it should be a community-led project if it's going to be successful, Chair. That's one of the reasons I can't support it. The second one is a viable plan for the pool's restoration. No funder in this country will give the estimated cost of the consultant that we engage on behalf of Time Out Pool. Suggested this would 2 years ago, the capital cost would be £23 million to restore Time Out Pool. No funder in the country offers grants of up to £23 million. It'd be very hard to bring the cash together. So at this stage, that is not a viable. I would hope to be a viable plan at some point in the future, but at this stage, I don't think that's a viable plan. So on those 2 points, we can't support the motion, but we absolutely wish the Friends of Time Out Pool the best in bringing this forward. We continue to offer support. John Sparks' team have been absolutely constant communication with them to offer support when they have needed it. And we wish them well, Chair, but we can't support this motion on those 2 grounds, Chair.
Councillor Johnson. Are there any further comments by members? Councillor Bones.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bailey is once again spreading untruths. We reached out to the Friends of Time Out Pool in advance of submitting this motion, and since the motions were published, I've had extensive conversations with them about the challenges they are facing. So it's completely untrue to say that this has been brought under a false pretense. It's disappointing that Labour will not back this Time Out Pool project with the resources that it needs to get off the ground over the line. We've had a Labour mayor here for the last 12 years and the pool has stood still. Nothing has happened to it. And it sounds like what they're saying opposite is if we get another Labour mayor in May, we'll have no progress on the pool. It will stand still for another 4 years. Residents can rest assured that if this side of the chamber, if I win the mayoral election in May, then residents will see progress on the pool. And that's exactly what this motion calls for. We'll be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bones. Are there any further comments? Councillor Mulvenner.
just like to point out that we've also had 2 Conservative mayors and they did nothing about it either.
Councillor Mulvenna, any further comments? Okay, Councillor Bartoli, would you like to use your right to reply, please?
Thank you, Chair. From this side of the chamber, we weren't sure what the Labour Party opposite would do tonight. We thought they may support us in this because it seems a fairly simple ask, and it would at least assist the Friends of Tynemouth Pool in making a decision one way or another whether this project will proceed and allow the council to be in a position to make a decision on the future of the pool. And I'm disappointed that the side opposite has chosen not to support this. I think for the councillors of Tynemouth to not support this is frankly disgusting. This is an asset in our ward, and for them to be playing politics and afraid to break ranks, I think is a shame on them. I'm not sure what motivation lies behind this, as Councillor Bailey seems to think it's some kind of trick. I'm not sure what motivation could lie behind this other than trying to improve this asset. It's not a lot to ask, and very disappointed in the side opposite.
Thank you, Councillor Bartoli. Can we now move to the vote on the motion, please?
I'll open the vote now. If members can please vote on the substantive motion. If all members have voted, I will close the vote.
Okay, the vote is 8 votes in favour, 45 votes against, so that motion falls. Thank you very much. We now move to motion number 3, signed by Councillor D. Lilly, Councillor L. Bones and Councillor J. Johnson. Can I invite Councillor Lilly to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. Labour's ideologically and politically motivated attack on private schools was a vindictive assault on this sector. However, this was just the first course, with the main course coming in the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, with its 2-pronged attack on our education system. The Education Secretary has taken aim at the providers of education and the curriculum offer they make. Academies will improve pupil performance and break the cycle of low expectations. Not my words, but those of Tony Blair, when he established academies via the Learning and Skills Act of 2000. This policy was continued by all successive governments, resulting in parents being offered a menu of providers which improved standards in education. A classic example of this is Michaela Community School in Wembley. Its inspirational head, Catherine Balber-Singh, has, by insisting upon discipline and by instilling respect, pride and academic rigour, routinely delivered some of the best student outcomes in the UK with a mostly disadvantaged urban population. The school has often sent more students to Oxbridge than Eton. When asked to comment on the school's success, Phillipson's silence was deafening. This is because it is anathema to her and her union paymasters that anything but total state control can be a force for good. Phillipson's aim is for all students to attend the same bog standard school. Not content with limiting parental choice over schools, she's intent on watering down and woking the curriculum. To this end, she's appointed a politically correct woke czar, Becky Francis, to revamp the curriculum. She wants to introduce left-wing politically correct dogma at the expense of academic rigour. History is to be rewritten and only presented from a left-wing perspective with no scrutiny. Science is to be decolonised, whatever that means. Probably no Newton, Darwin, Faraday, Lister, Marie Curie, Armstrong or Stevenson, to name a few. Classic literature is to be removed, no Steinbeck. How long before no Dickens or Shakespeare? The system works and we have comparators as proof. Wales, which was lauded by Labour as the template for socialist government, refused to adopt previous reforms. Academic outcomes for pupils in Wales are dire. In the PISA tables, they are languishing near the bottom in numeracy, literacy and science. When I started teaching 50 years ago and throughout my career, the Scottish education system was an exemplar to the world. The SNP took over and refused to implement reforms, resulting in their pupils tumbling down the PISA tables in numeracy, literacy and science. Compare these with England, where reforms were implemented. English students have steadily climbed the PISA tables to 10th in numeracy, 4th in literacy and 12th in science. The Education Secretary wants pupils in North Tyneside to attend bog standard schools teaching a watered down curriculum which aims for pupil outcomes to settle for the lowest common denominator rather than strive for the highest common factor. On the altar of ideology and to placate her union paymasters, Phillipson is intent on reversing years of progress by governments of both stripes, resulting in damage to the academic outcomes of future pupils in North Tyneside, thus limiting their ability to compete in the real world. I fear Phillipson will do more lasting damage to this country and by extension to North Tyneside than even Rachel from complaints. I urge members to support this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Do you have a seconder for that motion?
I'll second, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Johnson, and would you like to speak now or reserve the right? Reserve the right to speak. Okay. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak on the motion? Yes, Councillor Phillips.
Thank you, Chair. As this chamber should be aware, over 96% of the schools in North Tyneside are good or outstanding, so I'm incredibly surprised that Councillor Lilly needed to go all the way down to Wembley to find some good practice. So even though we're at 96%, we always look to improve, we're not complacent. So when the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill came out, I just kind of looked at some of the points that it hopes to kind of like address. So some of the things, just a handful: strengthen the role of education in safeguarding, local offer for care leavers, free breakfast club provision in primary schools, safeguarding children who are not in school, making sure school teachers are properly qualified, a removal of forced academisation, and cooperation on admissions and place planning, which I'm sure people would agree would be a quite useful tool we've had in the past couple of months in this borough. I looked at all these things. I just thought this is absolutely something that's going to improve the education in this area, 100%. Just to give some people a little bit of background, you mentioned the academies being a Tony Blair initiative, and he's exactly right. You know, academies did exist before 2010. However, Michael Gove in 2010 unleashed a completely different style of academies. I apologise to any self-respecting teachers in the room for mentioning that name. It probably sent a shiver down your spine. He promised reform and he promised improvements by allowing academies flexibilities and freedoms that local authorities were not allowed and are still not allowed. Unfortunately, the flexibilities and freedoms that he promised turned out to be the same freedoms and flexibilities afforded to privatised water companies and energy companies, and we all know how that's turned out. In terms of the pay thing that was mentioned, teacher pay and conditions have quite a straightforward pay scale. You move up the scale subject to a successful performance management. If you're not successful in your performance management, you don't move up the scale. Couldn't see anything wrong with that personally. Within that system, there was also the flexibility to reward exceptional teachers, so they could move up more steps up the scale if they proved to be exceptional. And it also allowed for recruitment and retention in shorter subjects, so you didn't have to come in on the bottom of the scale. If you proved you are really good, you could move up, especially in shorter subjects. Academy flexibility on pay simply allowed academies to not allow teachers to move up the scale, so they could actually stop it, and in some cases actually move down the scale. So that flexibility only kind of like worked one way. So it's no real surprise that there's a massive crisis in teaching recruitment and retention at the minute because of the Tory government of the past 14 years. The motion also goes on to state that the bill will create barriers to bring in subject specialists into the classroom. Absolutely not. One of the stated aims of the bill is to ensure that new teachers entering the classroom have or are working towards qualified teacher status. At the minute in academies, You don't have to be a qualified teacher. I don't know if there's any parents in the room. I'm certainly one, and I want my children to be taught by a qualified teacher, not just a subject specialist. So this bill means that actually not only will a teacher have the subject specialism, but there will also be a qualified teacher. The motion then goes on to the object of the idea of automatic conversion of failing schools. It's a nice choice of words, but anyone who's in education knows that actually that term should be forced academisation. Far nastier. Currently, a school in special measures is forced into academisation. No real say in who their sponsor is. So someone down at the DFE, well away from the authority, will decide which chain gets to subsume that school. Basically, we think that a school should be having a bit of a choice here. Okay, the head, the governors, parents and children should have the right to make two decisions, in my opinion. One, do they want to academise? And two, which academy, if they do want to join the academy, which do they join? Removing the automatic conversion element simply allows choice. And as a local authority, we would work tirelessly with any school to help them make the improvements needed, whatever path they choose. So we're not stopping them academising, we're just giving them a choice. This brings me to the final part of the motion regarding smartphones, which has already been mentioned in this chamber. Technology and IT is playing an increasingly important part in education, and sometimes smartphones can be part of this. The vast majority of problems regarding smartphones and social media incidents occur outside of the classroom. For example, I've worked in my current school for nearly 7 years now, and on only one occasion have I had to confiscate a phone from a student. So literally, I don't think a blanket ban on smartphones is in any way necessary. However, if individual schools were to approach the authority saying that this was a problem, we would work with them. Yeah, we would work with them. We will also work closely with schools to come up with a policy that would be bespoke for that school without negatively impacting other schools. So for this reason, I cannot possibly support this motion.
Right, Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Lee's speech was in parts ridiculous, in other parts blatantly sexist in the language he used to talk about the first female Chancellor, demeaning and undermining the role of somebody who is the first female Chancellor of this country is just quite ridiculous. If government had to legislate in a way that Councillor Lee could understand, I think they would probably not get very far. When we talk about things being removed from classrooms, I understand that in 2014, due to the changes of Michael Gove, books were removed from classroom, including two that he mentioned. I understand that To Kill a Mockingbird and Mice and Men were removed under Gove. And as Councillor Phillips has said, the reforms that so-called reforms, even that Michael Gove put in his time in power, has set back education in this country and the life opportunities of many children. There was a strange rant as well from Councillor Lilly around private schools, and I think that the Conservative Party's obsession with private schools speaks to how out of touch they are with the British public. And I think it's 7% of children in the country are privately educated. The last Tory cabinet, I think, was 65% privately educated, whereas in 2024, when the Labour Party took control, 92% of the cabinet was state educated, a massive change. And I think now it's the first time that the cabinet has been 100% state educated. Under Labour's plan for schools and to improve the lives of children, it's around the things that Councillor Phillipson talked about of delivering high standards for every child in the country, regardless of what their parents can afford. And I think removing the tax break on private schools allows the government to spend money directly on improving the life chances of children, not just across our communities now at Borough, but across the country. Having a free breakfast club for every child in the country and primary schools driving up attendance, driving up standards, giving children the best start to the day possible is exactly what government should be doing. My mum was a teacher before she retired, and I grew up with stories of from her experiences of being a young teacher under Thatcher and Major, and around how children would come to school hungry and they would have to use school funding and creatively through lessons to allow children to eat by when in English and when they were doing sort of how to do instructions, children would be teaching each other how to make toast to ensure that money could be put aside to allow children to eat during the day because the breakfast clubs weren't there. And I think the Tories want to see us return to that as a general rule across the country. The idea of raising standards for children who aren't amongst the wealthy and the privileged is not, as evidently after the last 14 years, has not been their priority. And to go on about woke this, woke that, whatever, is just ridiculous. We're trying to give children the best start in life, allow children from different backgrounds to feel included in the communities in which they live, in the schools in which they are educated, and to dismiss and demean that is just beneath contempt. This is just a ridiculous motion that doesn't actually speak to the realities of education or what our children, our communities need. Chair.
Okay, I've got Councillor Sprout now, and then
Chair, I think this side has to take fundamental issue with the term bog standard schools. I was in a bog standard school today at Riverside in North Shields, and for the members' information, I would suggest it's an outstanding school when you factor in the amount of deprivation that that area faces. I think it's highly disrespectful, the term, to head teachers and teachers. And I think you really need to reflect on that, David, because I consider you to be better than that statement.
thank you, Councillor Sprout. Councillor Walker. Sorry, Councillor Walker, you indicated. Wallace, sorry.
Chairman.
My apologies, Councillor Wallace.
Thank you. Chairman, I agree with the proposers of this motion. This bill, if passed, will have an absolutely appalling effect on our children, especially the most vulnerable. It will remove the freedoms which school leaders currently have to run their schools in the way in which they feel will most benefit their pupils. I'm really dismayed to hear what Councillor Phillipson has to say about the Michaela School in Wembley and how dismissive he is of that. It exists in an extremely deprived area with children from hugely varied backgrounds, much deprivation, much disadvantage, many different languages. Its results year on year knock virtually every school into a cocked hat, whether it's an independent school or a maintained school. The results are outstanding, and I do hope that everybody will pay great attention to the good work that's being done in that school and which will be severely damaged. However, Chairman, I wish to really focus my remarks on the part of the motion which deals with mobile phones. There has been an explosion in mental health problems in our children and also issues with behavioural problems in schools. And I'd like to draw the Chamber's attention to reports of a ban on smartphones a year or two ago in the John Wallace Church of England Academy. John Wallace is no relation, I hasten to add. This is an academy in Kent, where the head teacher decided to purchase pouches into which the children could put their phones, which meant that the phones could not be used during the school day. Staff and pupils were somewhat sceptical about this. However, by the second term, there had been a 42% decrease in low-level disruption sanctions, a 40% decrease in after-school detentions, and a 25% decrease in truancy. Furthermore, staff said that the cultural change within the school was amazing. The children were better behaved and less distracted, more respectful yet noisier. The noise came about because the pupils were actually talking to each other rather than being glued to their phones. Particularly noticeable in the playground, apparently, when the children, instead of filming things and being glued to their phones, were actually conversing and engaging in normal activities. Particularly, this was noticeable when the weather was cold and snowy and the pupils went outside to enjoy themselves rather than being glued to their phones. It was noticeable, said one member of staff, that break times are no longer sullen opportunities for students to sneak a glimpse at Snapchat or something similar. The social skills, which many of our children have seen diminished because of the pandemic, the social skills are being restored. Oppressive social media notifications stopped interfering in the day. the children instead, the pupils were able to focus themselves more on their environment, on their lessons, and on getting to know each other properly. Teachers reported some needs to alter their lesson style because the children and the pupils were actually more attentive. One unforeseen consequence was that the school had to buy some clocks because pupils had relied on their phones for telling the time. And a further unforeseen consequence was that a number of students couldn't actually tell the time using an analogue clock because they were entirely reliant on the digital version. So all in all, this has been an enormous success for that school. It spread outside school as well, and the school found parents asking if they could borrow the pouches to keep the children away from their phones at home time. Some people say that it's important for parents to be able to contact their children during the school day, but I'm sure most of us here can remember a day when actually parents, if there was an urgent matter, could call the school and the school could judge a way of contacting the children and passing on important information, the aim being to cause as little disruption to the school day as possible. So whilst the children at that academy school don't have the freedom to access their phones during the day, they do have the freedom to get to know each other, to speak, to converse, to become more socially active without the distractions of social media and other pressures. I do hope that the Chamber will support a ban on encouraging a ban on smartphones for our students in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace, for that. We're now looking at Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. I do want to just very quickly there, that's better. Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you. I think that's better. I know this has been a very emotive motion. I do actually want to say that I want to come at this from the point of view as a parent. I couldn't quite match the experience of someone like Councillor Phillipson who's worked in schools. So I do want to talk about, as a parent, I'm lucky enough to have 3 fantastic teenage daughters all at school and 1 incredible 6-year-old little boy in primary school. Sometimes we can get overexcited about whether or not we should be academised or whether or not we should have local government control. I actually want good schools. I don't really care if it's an academy. I don't actually care if it's a local government controlled school. I just want my children to have the ability to attend good quality schools. And if there is an option of academising, I think it should be a choice of the parents, the governors and the head teachers who make that decision. It shouldn't be forced upon them. I also want to quickly touch on to smartphones, as I know it's been brought up by Councillor Wallace. As a parent, I feel a lot more confident in my child's safety, knowing that they have an iPhone with them at school. I also noticed over the past 10 years, the amount of schools who are using apps in school to keep track of homework. My daughter suffers from dyslexia, so adaptive technology and adaptive apps that she can download onto her smartphone to assist her in school. So therefore, a blanket ban on smartphones isn't necessarily always going to be in the interest of the child, especially when we talk about dyslexia. My 6-year-old is about to start the process of getting iPads. So a lot of schools are now starting iPads at the age of 6 because they've recognised how important technology can be in the development of a child. And if we talk about a blanket ban on iPads, on phones, we must then start looking at schools who are using iPads and see whether or not that is appropriate. Well, actually, I've seen my daughters use iPad when they were in first school, and I've seen how well it assisted them in their education. So therefore, I don't think we should look down the route of a blanket ban on phones. I think we should, I want to have the choice. And that's what the Education Bill gives parents. It gives them choice. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make a brief point in that the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill is actually an important part of the government's strategy to tackle child poverty. I think it's about tackling poverty, it's about raising educational standards, It aims to remove barriers to opportunity. It's all about breaking the link between background and academic achievement and success. It's anything but detrimental to academic outcomes. It's about investing in breakfast clubs, limiting the number of branded school uniform items. It's investment in SEND. It's investment in safeguarding and protection of our children. It's about equality and equity. So it's no surprise to me that the Conservative group sitting opposite don't seem to get what this bill's about. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Thirlway.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to Councillor Lilly, it sounds more like a speech Donald Trump or Elon Musk would give rather than an North Tyneside
Chair, I
councillor.
take objection to that comparison and ask him to withdraw it.
Well, comparing you to the President of the United States. And I think because of Council, sorry? No, I won't withdraw the remarks. And I think any sympathy for the motion and the contents of the motion evaporated with Councillor Lilly's speech. You would think that after hammering in the general election that actually the Tories would have moved away from the culture war and the false outrage. And I think there's a lot of progressive councillors on the other side of the chamber, and I think they know, whether or not they say it or not, that that speech was extremely inappropriate and the things that were said.
Thank you, Councillor Thirlway. Councillor Bartoli, have you indicated?
Thank you, Chair. I'm in full support of the motion, but like Councillor Wallace, I want to focus my remarks on one of the key issues, which is the smartphone use in schools. This part of the motion, I think, is not about rejecting technology, as was perhaps mentioned before, or pretending we can turn back the clock. Phones do have their place in modern life. We must also acknowledge the harm they can do when overused, particularly in the classroom. There's growing evidence that smartphones are affecting children's ability to concentrate, learn, and even form real-world relationships. And research from the London School of Economics found that banning phones from schools, or at least during school times, improved test scores equivalent to giving students an extra week's worth of learning every year. And other studies show links between excessive phone use and anxiety, depression, and sleep disruption. And I don't think anyone in this room would argue that social media is not always a force for good when it comes to young people's mental health. And this isn't just theory, it's working in practice. And I know Councillor Wallace gave an excellent example earlier, but there's a school in Frampton where students are required to lock their phones away just for the school day. Teachers report better focus, fewer disciplinary issues, and students actually talking to each other rather than staring at screens. And across Europe, we're seeing similar steps. Denmark's Wellbeing Commission is calling for a nationwide ban on phones in schools, pointing to better attention spans, higher engagement in lessons, and improving mental health. And I think the side opposite may be out of step with their own party, because there's momentum in the UK about it as well. And Labour MP Josh McAllister has introduced a bill to protect teenagers from social media addiction, proposing to raise the digital age of consent and ban smartphones in schools. And the Health Secretary Wes Streeting has expressed his support for this move, recognising that unrestricted phone use is harming children's education, focus and mental health. So the question for us here in North Tyneside is, do we wait and see what other councils do, or do we take the lead? Why should we hold back on something that will help our children just because we're worried about being first to do it? I'm not going to pretend, I think as was pointed out, this is going to be problematic. It will be difficult. It'll take time, planning and cooperation with schools to get the logistics right. And that's why this motion isn't about imposing top-down rules. It's very clear that it's about offering to work with teachers, parents and school leaders to figure out a practical way forward. The council can play a vital role in making this transition work, providing guidance, support and funding where necessary to help schools develop and enforce a policy like this effectively. This part of the motion is not about rejecting technology. It's about making sure that when children are in school, they're learning, socialising and engaging with the world around them, rather than being pulled into the distractions of a screen. I urge all councillors to support the motion, not just because the research says it's the right thing to do, but because it's what's in the best interests of the children in North Tyneside. And I think it's ironic that the side opposite can criticise adults for using their phones in this environment, but yet seem happy to let our children use their phones while they're meant to be learning. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bartoli. Councillor Samuel.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Lilly very much for his speech, because I think it showed us very much the thinking of the modern Conservative Party, which is very much at odds with what we're hearing from Councillor Bones, who basically promises from a magic money tree to fund all sorts of things across the borough. No worry at all. 12% increase in the council tax by the cost of all that. But the Councillor Lilly gave us an extreme sort of vision of just exactly what kind of culture war that the Tories really want to fight, and I very much thank him for that. With the exception of the attack on the SNP, I always welcome attacks on the SNP. As far as the motion itself is concerned, it's all over the place. It's like it's designed by a camel. I mean, I think there is a place certainly for a debate about the use of mobile phones in schools. There's been various points of views across sides about whether or not there should be restrictions on that. I've got quite an open mind on that. I do have concerns about it. But why you had to throw that in then with an attack on the government is beyond me. So I won't be supporting this motion for that reason.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Councillor McMullen.
Yes, thanks, Chair. I just think it's probably important as corporate parents, you've mentioned about online harms. This council is actually working with school leaders going through and re-architect their Wi-Fi networks and school networks, which they've been left to do by themselves for the last 10 years. But we're going through a bit of a scheme, going through replacing all of their networks, the filtering, and making sure the children are safe with all the other devices such as iPads and laptops, which are within the school's control.
Thank you, Councillor McMullen. Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I am part of the statistics of teachers who have left the profession after 2 years. But I have to admit, I was a smartphone skeptic when I wasn't teaching, and have confiscated many a phone during my time when I did teach. Which is why I think the head teacher at the time made me take on a task of, I had to teach an entire term using virtual reality with kids using their smartphones. And I very much was a skeptic up until that point about banning smartphones in schools. But the way that enriched lessons during that period of time was fantastic. Kids that would have never been able to go to Mojave Desert or Borneo, the Borneo jungle, getting to see that and learn in that way. It was a really, really fantastic thing, and I was a massive skeptic beforehand. I still think there's place for debate on smartphones in school, certainly, and as Councillor Phillips has already said, any school in North Tyneside that wants to look at something like this, we will work with and support them if they want to do, but on a case-by-case basis. I think it's very much, the first part talked about schools having their say over what they want, and then the second part talked about blanket bans on phones. I'm very much up for schools having their say on what they want on smartphones, Chair, and would work with any school in this borough that wants to ban smartphones. And just to add, Josh McAllister has abandoned his bill on banning, he's removed that part of his bill on banning smartphones because it wasn't going to get government support.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Are there any further members who wish to speak on the motion? Okay, I believe Councillor Johnson, you reserved the right. Do you want to speak on it? Okay, so Councillor Bartoli, can you use your right to reply, please? Oh, it's Councillor Lilly. But he was looking at us.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd just like to make a few points, actually. Councillor Phillips has totally missed the point of this motion. I wasn't attacking local schools. The reforms I mentioned, I feel, will have a negative effect on education outcomes in North Tyneside. I never once stated that I was against all the positive points in the Schools and Wellbeing Act, of which there are many. Just the parts of it mentioned in the motion. Again, those concerns were not addressed by Councillor Phillips. He went off on a bit of a tangent. Councillor Phillips never commented on the points made regarding the dumbing down of the curriculum or the limiting of choice for parents sending pupils to school, therefore limiting choice for pupils in disadvantaged areas. My reference to private schools was to show that this was just a smokescreen for what was to follow. Bog standard is not my term. It is a term used by Labour politicians nationally. My reference to the Michaela School was partly to highlight the Education Secretary's total indifference to the progress of this school. even though pupils from a disadvantaged background have excellent academic outcomes. Councillor Newman contribution was rather different, and I'd just like to say to him, in all my 50 years of teaching and being in the years in this chamber, all I've ever wanted was the best education for every child. I wasn't a private educated. I went to a bog standard school. I see education as a way forward for everybody, and I think Councillor Newman's contribution was honest and given with an open mind, showing his care and interest in getting the best education for his children. Councillor Clark again decides to ignore the thrust of this motion and accuse me of not wanting to, not understanding the main thrusts of the bill. I do understand the main points of the bill. I accept most of the points of the bill. I just do not agree with the changes to curriculum and to the providers of education. And I really feel annoyed at people accusing me of not wanting to see safeguarding improve, not wanting to see outcomes for children improve. I spent all my time in this council trying to achieve those. When I sat in the chair that Councillor Early sat in, I spent most of my time trying to enhance the lifestyle of looked after and disadvantaged children. So that is not what this motion is about. Breaking the background, as Councillor Clark said, she should use the Michaela School as an example. The most disadvantaged part of London. The school was dragged up by an inspirational head teacher who instilled the right values in a school to make progress and to give those kids the best possible educational outcomes they could ever have expected. And as I said in my speech, more pupils going to Oxbridge than go from Eton. And yet the Education Secretary couldn't bring herself to congratulate the head teacher because she's an ideological zealot. And Councillor Sams, again, didn't speak to any of the concerns. He just rambled on. Didn't address the concerns I made in the motion. Just had to say something that was totally irrelevant. All I can say is that I have put forward this motion from the perspective of looking for what I think would be best for the children in North Tyneside. And I would encourage all members to support the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lilly. Councillor Phillips, I believe it's got to be on a...
Yeah, it's just a point of order. Some of Councillor Lilly said there. He said that I didn't respond to some of the things that he put in his motion. I'd just like to point out that the motion is what is written down and not necessarily
not a point of order.
And not necessarily speech. I did respond to the things. Can you ask him to be quiet while I'm talking, please?
It's not a point of order.
He's explaining that it's probably what was on paper that he's responded
I'll explain my point, and then if I'm wrong, you can tell us I'm wrong. Is that okay, Chair?
Yeah.
Right. So I got told that I didn't respond to some of the things that he put in his motion. The motion is what is written down. I responded to things that were written down: limits on peer flexibility, subject specialists in the classroom, automatic conversion, and smartphones. That was what was written down. I didn't respond necessarily to the stuff that he said in his speech, which isn't actually part of the motion. The motion is what is written down. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Chair, as he has had his say, can I come back on that? He accused me when he spoke.
No, it's not a discussion. If you've got a point of clarification on something, but the points he's made were relevant. What is on the motion is the bit he has to comment on or commented on. So that's fair enough. Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Mulvenna. It's we've had the right to reply to that.
I'm sorry to ask this, but who is running the meeting?
Well,
is it the chair or is it other members?
Well,
who seem to be jumping in without being invited.
Okay,
I think this is against the rules. To be
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for that. But it's the meeting's been, or the motion's been, you've made your right to reply. So that means we now move to the vote.
Could all members please vote on the substandard motion? All members have voted. I will close the vote.
Okay, the result is 8 votes in favour, 47 votes against. So that motion fails. Thank you very much. We now move on to motion 4, signed by Councillor Bones, Councillor J Johnson and Councillor D Lilly. Can I invite Councillor Bones to move this motion?
Thank you, Chair. Last week, someone in Killingworth came out of their house to tell me that as long as the Mayor had her chauffeur-driven car, he wouldn't be voting Labour. As much as the Labour Party laughs whenever we bring this issue up, I say we should scrap it. This is a big issue for people who are struggling with the cost of living. Taxpayers are paying for the Mayor and for Labour councillors to be chauffeured around to open gin bars, to go for breakfast in Newcastle at the Centre for Life, and to have afternoon tea at Mansion House in Jesmond. Why on earth are people in North Tyneside paying for that? You are taking all of us for a ride. There are local people who have been forced to fill the potholes in their own streets themselves because this council has left them in such a state. Local schools are organising litter picks because the streets are filthy. You only need to look at Facebook groups and see daily graffitis, car break-ins and tyre slashing just to see how bad crime and antisocial behaviour has gotten under Labour's watch. But thank goodness there's enough money to let the chauffeur take you to that barbecue in Morpeth. Whilst you're driven in a luxury Jaguar to a ukulele festival, I'm thinking of the pensioner struggling to heat their home after your cruel cuts to the winter fuel allowance. I'm thinking of the young family trying to get by when their council tax is spent on your luxuries instead of improving their estate. I'm serious about delivering value for money. Get rid of the chauffeur-driven car will be the first step of many. To the Labour councillors who've had 12 years of luxury paid for by the taxpayer, it's all about a change. 100% of everyone's council tax will be spent on improving the places where we live. If Labour don't support my plan, it will show the public that they're simply in it for themselves, that even in a cost of living crisis, they will prioritise themselves over residents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Do you have a seconder for the motion? Councillor John Johnson, do you wish to speak now? Or? Okay.
I can see already across the chamber we've got the usual laughter, rolling of eyes and clutching of pearls around this motion. I don't want to say a huge amount, but for me this is about very much walking the walk and not talking the talk. We all agree that optics matter and actions matter to our residents. We can't honestly sit here in this chamber and talk about issues such as our pensioners struggling to pay their heating bills, the cost of living crisis and the climate emergency without doing the right thing and taking some action ourselves. In supporting this motion, we are sending out a clear signal to our residents that we are getting our own house in order before we start and lecture them about using our cars and tightening their belts during difficult times. What would look better than our elected mayor turning up on foot to events, using public transport, even putting one of our cycle schemes to use? Councillor Clark, I know you're a keen cyclist, and I've told Councillor Bones that should either of you win the forthcoming mayoral election, our group will pop down to the recycling centre, find an old knacker of a bike and fix it up for him so that you can get around the borough in an environmentally friendly manner. Let's all agree to sell the gas guzzle and jag. Our residents hate it. Put the issue to bed and demonstrate to our residents that we are living the values we talk about. We listen, we care, we are ambitious and we are good value for money. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Johnson, do we have anybody who wishes to speak on this motion? Or Councillor Lott?
Thank you, Chair. Just to provide a little bit of actual context. Once again, we've got this perennial, vague and financially absurd motion from the Tories designed to grab a headline or to provide the basis for a photoshopped social media post, rather than to actually contribute to the effective running of the civic aspect of this council's service to our residents. The car, currently valued at £7,500, is only used on an as and when required basis. The driver is contracted on a similar basis and is otherwise employed as a courier, delivering mail to councillors' homes, only switching to the driver's role when necessary. The motion refers to the cost of this luxury without defining the cost, or for that matter, the luxury. We are then told that many councils have already scrapped similar expenses, but we aren't told which councils and we aren't told which similar expenses. The facts are that each of our regional neighbours retains a civic car, except Sunderland. They have 3. I'd like the mover of the motion to tell council which other metropolitan authority has no civic car and how their civic engagements are conducted. Incidentally, the savings in the first year, if we were to sell the car and sack the driver, the savings would be just enough to tarmac an area the size of a cricket pitch. And that's wicket to wicket, not outfield. Let's take a look at the practicalities of this matter. Supposing we have a chair of council who doesn't drive, lives in North Shields, and he or she is invited to an event by the Air Cadet Force in Wide Open. Let's also accept that the chair and the consort may well live in different properties, it's been known. They would first have to meet up at North Shields Transport Hub, take the 306 to Newcastle, change at the Haymarket onto the number 45 to Wide Open. They arrive at the event at 7 o'clock, just giving them time to have a cup of tea, introduce themselves, and then leave prematurely because the last bus leaves Wide Open at 8 o'clock. Although I suppose they could hitch a lift to the airport and get the metro back in, changing at South Gosforth. And all while wearing the chains of office valued at around £20,000. What, I wonder, would be the insurance costs if the insurer knew that the gold chains were travelling around the borough on public transport? Of course, the chair and consort could use a taxi. But what if the event was a regional one, being held in Morpeth, Amble, Durham, Stockton? That taxi fare, by the way, would be £80 each way without a tip. The range of duties fulfilled by successive chairs of this authority demonstrate how our residents and community groups value visits by the chair and consort, whether they involve presenting prizes to scores of young dancers at Marden Club, attendance at residents' 100th birthday parties, attending Tynemouth Scouts AGM, the Whitley Bay Film Festival, the opening of a cultural centre in North Shields, and the list goes on. It's clear that when the alternatives are considered, the car represents good value for money and invaluable security for the chair and the chains. The final bullet point of this motion, by the way, calls for a full review of all expenditure. That's something that we do as a matter of course on a daily basis. Perhaps the party opposite didn't. Finally, it's noteworthy, but not surprising, that they never proposed this when they were running the authority. And so I'm asking councillors to vote against this motion for the reasons previously outlined. And in closing, I recall a meeting of this council's Boundary Commission Review Group in 2023, when a former leader of the Conservative group, on hearing a suggestion that her ward could be extended by half a mile to the west, exclaimed, "Good heavens, I need a car to cover that ward." But we're talking about taking away a car that services the entire borough. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Lott. Are there any further members who wish to speak on the motion?
Chairman, if that comment was directed at me, I think, in the words of Her late Majesty, recollections may differ.
Sorry.
Would it help if I added or words to that effect?
No, it wouldn't.
Okay. Yes, sorry about that. Councillor Drummond.
Thanks, Chair. Just a reminder at the other side that when they were in power in this council, that they used the civic car to ferry Tory ministers around.
Councillor Mulvenner.
I think what it demonstrates that the party opposites don't really understand what the civic car is there for. And I emphasise the word civic car because it doesn't belong to the mayor. It actually is to serve anyone within this council, provided it is approved. For example, any member of the opposition can request the use of that car, and if that car is available and they can justify why they're using it, they can use it. That is my understanding. However, they decide to attack the mayor on a regular basis because of her limousine. Well, to be perfectly honest, the mayor nearly crashed into me the other day in a little white Fiesta, which you know, so if that's a limousine, well, eat your heart out. And as for the term limousine, to be perfectly frank, if you class a Jaguar XF as a limousine, you want your head examined. They're one of the worst cars on the road. You know, I mean, it's absolutely crazy, but you don't understand what that car represents. It's the status of the borough, not the individual riding in the car. The individual riding in the car is representing the borough, but the status is enhanced by the fact that they arrive in that car. The driver of the car, who you seem to want to get rid of as well, also acts as the security, the safety of the chains. Quite often the mace is in the back. They are responsible for keeping the car clean and tidy. They're also the photographer when photography is needed. And for the price we actually pay, it's the cheapest in the area. Add to that, about 10 years ago, Northumberland decided to get rid of their car. The following year, they bought a new one, plus a people carrier, because it didn't work out economically acceptable. I mean, for example, just supposing the chair of the council needs to go to the trauma centre at Killingworth, at Cramlington, sorry, on a daily basis on civic duties, we're saving £60 a shot. You know, and that's just on a short journey to Cramlington. So economically, it just doesn't stack up. And from a safety point of view, it falls down. And I think those who've used the car opposite, if they're honest about it, and I know there's at least 2 people opposite who've used the car in the past, if they're honest about it, they would be quite happy and feel quite safe in that car.
Thank you, Councillor Mulfenner. Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak solely to the last bullet point in this motion. Commit to a full review of all expenditure and efficiencies to maximise funding into our residents' priorities. The group officers had an opportunity to do that last month when they failed to submit a budget to this council. The Labour group did indeed review all expenditure and efficiencies to maximise funding to our residents' priorities, and we put forward a budget to that effect. The Conservatives group once again failed to do so. They've continued to show time and time again they have no idea how to run this authority at all.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Are any further members wish to speak on this motion? Who was it? Oh, Joseph. So, Councillor Mulfenner, carry on.
Thank you.
Zwinker.
Well, it's very frustrating to find that Councillor Bones is just taking this opportunity to make this your farewell speech to the mayor, who has done a great work to improve North Tyneside, and actually to say that the luxury car goes to Life Center for Tea. Why would she want to go to Life Center for Tea in a luxury car? Is that really quite even practical? Why can't people just be truthful? Because honestly, as councillors, we cannot be sitting in this chamber talking about things that are not truthful. Obviously, safety is more important, but on the speech, it was like, we are not prioritizing and we're not thanking the mayor for the job that she has done. And this is her last chamber. And I think just being respectful is also important. And for that reason, I wouldn't support that kind of motion.
Cross move the vote, please, Chair.
Councillor Howson.
Yes, Chair. I was actually going to start off by same old Tories always mourning, you know, which I hear on a regular basis. I don't think we should be ashamed, and we actually should put this type of motion to bed once and for all, because my understanding is that we are a multi-million-pound organisation. We have a number of functions out there, and some of those are of a civic nature and a need for us to actually go out there and demonstrate to our community of our involvement. And if it is a use of a not a luxury car, but it is a use of a vehicle in a car, and it is used by our civics, then I haven't got a problem with that. It's a very small percentage that we're talking about in a multi-million pound organisation. Our budget that we have, I hear the same thing every year, but the opportunity is clearly for them at each budget setting time, which they've failed, the last one, to actually come forward with any proposals or savings. So I don't think I can take this serious, because they say it every time, but the reality, what they don't understand, right, this vehicle isn't abused. This vehicle is used only for those functions as needed, and quite clearly within the remit that it's for. It is not a massive amount of money that we're talking about here. It's a very small percentage. Yes, every savings matters, and I agree with that. But the reality at the end of the year, what we lose by taking this away is something for the people out there who will see that a civic function with that and the representation of North Tyneside Council, which is a multi-million pound organisation dealing with a lot of people out there, and they're expecting to see their council, modern council, going forward and representing them properly. So I think we should just put these types of motions to bed and not be ashamed of it.
Move the vote, please, Chair.
Somebody speak. Oh, move to the vote. Okay, Councillor Bones has still got his right to reply.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on a few points. Councillor Lott said that the civic car is used on an as and when basis, and I'd love to hear how he justifies and how he thinks that going to a ukulele festival, to a summer barbecue, to breakfast at the Centre for Life is one of those as and when basis. I mean, Councillor Munzingwa seemed equally surprised, as surprised as we were when we found out through a Freedom of Information request that the civic car was being used to go to such lavish events. Councillor Lott also said that this chair or the mayor would have to attend civic events on a bus. That would be the same way that we expect all of our residents to go through their day-to-day lives. There's no reason the chair or the mayor should be treated any differently. And I'm glad he outlined how bad public transport is in the North East under this Labour Council, this Labour Regional Mayor and this Labour Government. To come back to Councillor Mulvena's speech, Councillor Mulvena said that members of the opposition may wish to use the car. We would never do that, and that's what we've been really clear about, is that we shouldn't be expecting taxpayers to cover having us ferried around in a luxury car. Councillor Munzingwa talked about this mayor's legacy, and I think for most people in the borough, they will think of this mayor as being ferried around in a chauffeur-driven car to various vanity projects for a photo opportunity, and that is how this mayor will be remembered. This motion was about turning a page, moving on from 12 years of Mayor Redfern, getting rid of the civic car and moving on to put the taxpayer's purse front and centre of everything this council does. Councillor Harrison doesn't think the civic car is a massive amount of money and therefore it's somehow excusable. I think a single penny being spent on ferrying politicians around, who, by the way, both drive their own cars, is completely absurd. We'll be supporting this motion. If we're elected in May, we'll be getting rid of the chauffeur-driven car, and it's shameful the party opposite won't do the same.
Thank you, Councillor Bones. Councillor Mulvena, it has to be on a personal nature.
It is. I would just like to point out that you should do your research, because in approximately 2018-19, the Conservatives then had an alderman in the borough of North Tyneside, and on a regular occasion,
Chair, this alderperson is not a member of this group, and the rest, I think specifically members on this side of the chair.
He was a Conservative alderman, and he was elected as an alderman, as an ex-Conservative. Whether he was still a member or not doesn't really matter, but he used to regularly get taken home and brought to events so that he could participate in the civic processes, which would happen with any person of that sort of stature.
Thank you, councillor Mulfenna. Councillor Drummond, you'd indicated.
Thank you, Chair.
Again, it has to be on a personal issue because obviously.
Councillor Drummond wasn't
Chair,
named.
it is. How long we're going to allow Councillor Bones to talk over the chair?
Well,
and B, how long is it going to be allowed to say half truths about the mayor using it as a chauffeur-driven car? We all know she goes in our own car everywhere.
Chair, this is not right. We're now going to move to the
Complete
vote.
fabrication.
We're now going to move to the vote.
Yeah, Chair, I did say under a point of personal information that I do feel as though that the council had misinterpreted the words that I said. I didn't say it in that way. What I did say was that we should not be ashamed of using that, giving the function that it's for, and on the civic side of it. I did acknowledge there was an amount of money in there, but we should not be ashamed of that either, because people are expecting to see this multi-million-pound organisation with their civics actually going out there and doing what they need to in that community. So the misinterpretation of my wording, I apologise that the councillor didn't understand clearly what I was saying.
Thank you very much for that clarification, Councillor Harrison. We're now going to move to the vote on the motion.
We're going to open the vote, please. Members could please vote. If all members have voted, I will close the vote.
Okay, that's 8 votes in favour of the motion, 46 votes against. So that motion has fallen. Thank you very much, everyone. We now move on to motion 5, signed by councillors J. Bartoli, councillor Bones and councillor D. Lilly. Can I invite councillor J. Bartoli to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. I have brought this motion forward today as we are all feeling the strain from parking congestion in our neighbourhoods, and it's clear that this isn't just a nuisance, it's also taking a toll on our local environment. Many of our grass verges are getting damaged by vehicles, especially when the weather's wet, which not only makes our surroundings look unkempt, but also creates safety concerns for our families and neighbours. Take, for example, the concerns voiced by residents in the Lynn Estate in my ward. They've spoken up about the state of our verges and the need for lasting practical parking solutions. Their experiences remind us that every community deserves a safe, well-kept environment where children can play freely, commit, and everyone can feel secure. That's why we're committed to a thoughtful, borough-wide strategy to ease parking pressures and repair the ongoing damage to our green spaces. By converting some of our verges into additional parking spaces, where it makes sense, we can help reduce congestion and cut down the ongoing costs of fixing damaged infrastructure. This isn't just about finding more parking spots, it's an investment in a future where our neighbourhoods are more organised, our natural surroundings are better protected, and our overall quality of life is improved. To make this vision a reality, it's crucial that we work together on this issue. We need to work together across political lines, listen to the ideas of residents, and consult with our dedicated council officers. Apologies. That's why I'm calling on the Mayor to set up a cross-party task and finish group. This group will look closely at the parking challenges and the conditions of our grass verges, and they'll explore innovative, cost-effective and environmentally friendly solutions. Whether through verge conversions, alternate parking options or smarter enforcement, our goal is to develop a balanced and practical plan that benefits everyone in our community. The challenge before us is a real issue that it's time to recognise and we do something about, but it's one we can overcome with cooperation, careful planning and open dialogue. Together, we can create a solution that not only meets our current needs, but also sets a stage for sustainable urban planning in the years to come. I invite everyone here to support this initiative, share your ideas and stand together for a more organised, safe and attractive North Tyneside. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Bartoli. Do you have a seconder for that motion?
I'm seconder.
Okay, thank you. Do you wish to speak now or reserve the right?
Yes, please, Chair. I bring forward concerns from residents in my ward regarding 2 key issues: the poor state of grass verges and the lack of parking. Grass verges, which are meant to enhance our neighbourhoods, are now damaged by vehicles and becoming unsightly and unsafe. The residents no longer feel proud of where they live and need a permanent solution. Parking shortages are another major frustration. Estates were not designed for today's car ownership levels, leading to congestion and safety hazards. This is particularly dangerous for school children and the elderly who struggle to cross the roads due to obstructed views and parked cars blocking the roads and pavements. We must explore practical solutions, including additional parking spaces and better management. Emergency vehicles are also struggling to access some of the streets, which is of critical concern. Our residents deserve a well-maintained and accessible environment. I urge the council to take action and join me in supporting this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGinty. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak on the motion? Up, Councillor Hannah Johnson.
Yes, just to move an amendment, Chair. I believe they've been handed out previous to the meeting. Oh, to them. Getting it. I think if people are happy, I'll just go through some of the thinking behind it. So first of all, I think it's fairly self-explanatory. We're just making sure that it's clear that this is a motion for everyone across the borough rather than just the Lynn Estate. I appreciate there is a particular problem on the Lynn Estate, but there are other areas where we've got these grass verges. We don't disagree that they need looking at, and we think that the time is now. Mostly because we have brought the highways team in-house back from Capita, which was quite frankly a disastrous outsourcing of the service from the previous Tory administration. Since we've taken it back in-house, which was only 3 and a bit months ago, literally on the 2nd of January, we put together a really comprehensive programme of road resurfacing, line redrawing, we've had repatching works, and I've been told on a few occasions just how great the potholes have been filled in now, and how the service afterwards and the follow-up afterwards was great as well. We've had a ministerial visit as well, and I know that Lillian Greenwood's really pleased to see the work that our Harrods department are doing, so we feel very confident that now is the time to start tackling this issue. I'm sure the Tory group would agree as well. The only other thing too is that we think there's already a cross-party group in the Green Subcommittee. Indeed, I've got the agenda for the last Green Subcommittee in front of me, and one of the agenda items was pavement parking and flagged footway repairs. So this is absolutely the appropriate place for it to go. It's cross-party, it'll go through the right channels, we'll have officers there, people will be able to discuss and debate within that forum as well. So there's no real need to open a working group, or a task and finish group, I should say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Do you have a seconder for that amendment?
Yes, Chair, I'll second that. Reserve the right.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, are there any members who wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, Councillor Lilly.
Just an observation, Chair. Councillor Johnson says that this is, not contentious and it's cross-party and it has support and everybody's looking for the same outcome. And she can't resist making it political. And it's sad that we can't just rise above this on certain occasions in this chamber. It really saddens me that that can't happen.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Lilly. Are there any further members wish to speak on it? Yes, Councillor Bartoli.
Thank you, Chair. This is undoubtedly an issue that certainly most of us as councillors have come across, and the reality is that many older residential estates in North Tyneside are struggling with parking pressures, as was pointed out, and the damage to grass verges is becoming a persistent, costly problem. In my own ward, this is a particular issue in the Marden area. One of the most concerning cases that I've come across is on Wallington Avenue, where a resident's car is being damaged simply because the only way they can access their property is by driving across the grass verge. A verge already churned up by other vehicles forced to do the same. It's now become so deeply damaged it's causing damage to her car. Similarly, on Hartburn Road, letters have been sent to residents warning them about damage to the verges. Yet despite these warnings, no action has been taken by the council, and the result is the damage continues and residents are left frustrated by the lack of a solution. The cost of sending letters, responding to complaints, repairing verges and maintaining grassed areas all add up, and these are ongoing costs that could be significantly reduced if we took a more strategic approach instead of repeatedly repairing the same problems. We should be identifying locations where verges can be removed and replaced with parking spaces. The reality is that many of these verges were designed at a time when car ownership was much lower. While they may have once served a purpose, they are no longer appropriate for some of our residential areas. If grass verges were a good idea, our modern estates would all have them, but we no longer see them being built as they're impractical and costly. We need a long-term sustainable approach that acknowledges the need of today's residents rather than trying to preserve a layout designed for the past. There undoubtedly would be initial cost in reviewing and converting some of these verges, but over time, I think this would lead to a cost saving. Fewer repairs, fewer complaints, less damage, and most importantly, a practical solution to the parking pressures that residents deal with every single day. We had asked for a cross-party task and finish group, and those that of us that have been on cross-party task and finish groups know how effective they can be. I don't think that the Green subcommittee will have the same kind of impact that a task and finish group would have had, and it also limits those councillors perhaps who have that particular problem in their ward, so I think would have been most suited to be on the group. It's clear that this is going to go through with the amendment, and we welcome the work being done, but I think the amendment has effectively made it less effective, diluted it. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bartoli. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I also felt the need to speak on this motion in large part because of this being a recurring issue on the Marden estate. The Marden estate has got a lot of similarities to the Lynn estate, at least the part that myself and other Time Out council look after. I suppose two key differences are that parts of the Marden estate are susceptible to flood risk, and also car ownership is higher in the Marden estate. I'd stress that, there is really good data in terms of car ownership across the borough and how that's changed over time. We don't need to be guessing at this. We've got really good information on this. Car ownership is heavily influenced by economic growth, in particular people who don't currently own a car acquiring one. And I think we need to assume that economic growth over the next few years will improve with the new Labour government in place. And we need to be asking our officers to look at not only what vehicle storage demand there is on these estates at the minute, but what there is likely to be in 2 or 3 years' time. There are many people on the Marden estate who value the verges as they are. Some of them maintain them themselves, and I think we need to keep in mind the fact that these do have utility to people as they are. When we look at streets, we need to look at the full width between buildings and take a holistic approach. Often residents, when they're putting their own driveways in, are making better decisions or have got a better range of options than the council itself does. People are using permeable materials. People are encouraged by our planning policies to use permeable materials. And I think we also need to look at to what extent that's working well or working as well as it should be. One of the problems that we have and that came out in the Green Committee meeting, which Councillor Johnson mentioned recently, is that at the moment the council does not have a set of cost-effective permeable materials which can be used. So we're faced with this very extreme choice between tarmacking versus leaving verges as they are. I think one of the things we need to ask our officers to do is to look harder at this and find more permeable materials that don't present this as such an extreme choice between increasing flood risk on an estate versus dealing with vehicle storage problems, which we are going to have to do. So the last thing to mention is that, often the solution to this problem can be about talking to people and community work. I suppose an example of that is Wallington Avenue, a location, probably 10 metres away from the one that Councillor Bartoli mentioned, where I was also actually talking to the same resident today. And what we found there was that there was a specific problem on that street, which was leading to verge abuse, which was leading to vehicles being parked on that verge. We were able to solve that problem. The vehicles are now off that verge. There was no need to tarmac it. We've solved this. That street, that verge is starting to recover. And so it's not necessarily always a choice between construction works versus accepting that a problem is going to stay as it is. And those are all things that, this motion could be looked at by the Green Committee in the way which is set out in this amended motion. Thank you.
Councillor Bailey, Councillor Carl Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I propose we move to the vote, Chair. I think we both accept that this initiative needs looked at. I can't understand the opposition saying that taking it to a formal committee of this council would somehow weaken it when it would actually strengthen it. And I'm not sure the opposition probably want to debate the merits of the disastrous outsourcing to capital. So I presume propose we move to the vote, Chair.
Chair don't have a right to reply.
Well, there's still the right to reply, and Councillor Thurloway had signified that he wanted to speak.
No, I agree with Councillor Carl Johnson.
Okay. And Councillor Montague, you didn't want to speak.
Agree with Councillor Johnson, although I was going to.
Okay, so if that's it, if that's the case, Councillor Bartoli, you have the right to reply.
Thanks, Chair. It's a shame that the party opposite has made this political. This should be about improving parking in places like the Lynn Estate, something this Labour mayor has done nothing to tackle. I know as a New York and Merton councillor, we have been working to secure funding to turn some grass verges into parking spaces. This has fallen to deaf ears under this mayor. Once again, the amendment fails to take responsibility for the issue and instead tries to place the blame on a Conservative mayor who has been out of office for 12 years and is no longer with us. This is shameful. We won't be supporting this amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. Can we move to the vote now then on the amendment?
Can members please vote on the amendment? If all members have voted, I will close the vote.
Okay, we have 8 against and 47 for. So the amendment is passed and now becomes a substantive motion. Carl?
Move straight to the vote, Chair. Oh, no, Councillor Johnson has the right to reply, but move straight to the vote.
Okay, it says, agree with that, Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I'm happy to move straight to the vote.
Okay, we'll move straight to the vote then.
Can all members please now vote on the substantive motion as amended? If all members have voted, I'll close the vote.
Okay, everyone, that's 54 for, none against, no abstentions. So that has now passed. So that motion's passed. Now, just explain them.
It's your decision what you want to do.
Well, I'm going to stick with verbal. Okay, everyone. As I pointed out earlier in the meeting, which seems a very long time ago now, that I didn't think there would be time to do all the questions. So I've decided under Rule 10, paragraph 13B, that all the questions from members tonight will be replied to in writing. It's now 10 to 9. I no way would get through 12 questions. So I've made the decision. We are going to reply in writing to all of those questions.
It's
So, Councillor Bones?
Just a question on that decision. You said earlier that we could ask our supplementary questions in writing as well. What would be the process for that? Sorry, you said earlier that following that decision that we would be able to ask supplementary questions in writing as well. What is the process for that?
Well, it would be, you could write in either to, well, you could write into me, submit them to the legal services and then to Stephen. Yeah, okay.
Might want to wait for the reply to ask a supplementary though. Supplementary is meant to come after a reply, so you might want to wait until you get the replies before.
Yeah. So if people wait to get the reply and then said that supplementary, it would still be included as part of that motion. Now it's actually announcements by the Mayor. Do you have any comments by the Mayor? Okay, thank you very much. Tonight, as we all know, this is the last meeting of the municipal year for the council. So this will be the last time we'll all get together before the elections. So, but my announcements tonight are going to be short, but they're also likely going to be the most important of my time as chair. As you all know, our Mayor, Dame Norma Redfern, is not standing for re-election. As chair, I would like to place on record the thanks of the residents of North Tyneside, the officers and members, both past and present, for her commitment and service to our borough. Could I now ask you all join me in a round of applause for Dame Norma Redfern. Yeah, we're still going to stand. No, we'll just do it. Thank you very much, everyone. That brings us to the end of the meeting, and I formally close the meeting tonight. Thank you for your contributions.